Story 1. Let's say if you're going to be the kind of person who gets to have a baby just because you didn't like the first one, well, let me tell you, you don't deserve any baby in the first place. As simple as that. I mean, it's a thought I would have told my parents over 30 years ago when they had me. They would have skipped the experience and gone straight to my sister. So they would not have to leave a person with an existential and sentimental void like I am now. Sorry if I sound very adolescent, it's just that anger makes me write all this in tears. And all because of a couple of individuals suck in their role as parenting. My sister has always been the favorite. The number one, numero uno. The one who's always got the attention, who was supported in everything. The one, if she needed a sheet of paper for a student project, bought her a whole box of paper. While I, had to save my allowance to be able to buy a soda pop. Every now and then at school, there was no support in any way for me, not even when I asked them for a set of paints, which they promised to get me and which surely, if they had given it to me, would have awakened the artist in me. But no. They only made me have books. And what they forced me to do is study. Tax law. Also known as the most boring career in the world. I warn you that this is a story of the oldest child being displaced by the youngest in every way possible and in a twisted way. I wished for many years that my parents would have another baby so that she would get displaced, the middle child treatment, right? But it did not happen. So I kept quiet for the rest of my life, and it was particularly difficult during adolescence because of all this rebellious youth and other stereotypes. My parents and I argued quite a bit during that time, but it's because they generated those same discomforts. I remember one time when I got in trouble at school, and they spent almost an entire afternoon talking to the principal about my behavior, this and that, delving to the core of the problem, which happily was lack of attention at home. Thereupon, my parents, scolding me, apologized as well, and we went home. My treatment that good week went slightly better, which is as far as I can remember. But after the week was over, things went back to normal, and unfortunately for me, my sister was still the center of attention. I was relegated to the background per usual. If I had a little more money, believe me, I would have paid for some psychological therapy sessions. But I didn't. So, like any good person of this century, I bit my tongue and repressed all my feelings until college, where I met John. I'd always had the peculiar of dating big, strong, confident guys, but ultimately they ended up the same way, cheating on me and abandoning me and any hint of fidelity they could generate in me. Add to that where I come from, and believe me, my head was not in a good place to live. John was different. He was short, skinny, nerdy, and a video game fanatic, and allergic to contact sports. Yeah, I sound cruel, but those were his words. At first, he didn't catch my attention, at all, and I even disliked him a bit, being that I was the one, of those people who would possibly bully him if I could get him on the street. Or not bullying, really, but just ignore him, generating the same conflict I had at home. But that was until I talked to him. He was tender, sympathetic, kind, gentleman. I still remember our, 5 first dates in detail? And it's because I finally felt like I was being treated the way I deserved to be treated. Because someone was paying attention to me and making me see that I was enough or even too much for him. He used to say that he would never in his life expect someone like me to end up dating someone like him. Because of all the stark differences, right? He was also honest with me and explained about his very difficult condition. He suffers from constant pain, mostly in the back area, and has scoliosis since childhood. This has been a fairly notorious limitation since he was born, and although physically he seems to be fine, he was telling me that at any moment he could require emergency surgery. He's since been rallying in case it does happen, and it was something that I thought was both smart and brave of him. He told me that from job to job, he managed to scrape together at the age of 12 almost $2,000 without ever spending on a popsicle or one of those sodas I craved in school. That's why I said this guy has my respect. And, things just happened. However, there was a lot of things involved for which I feel somewhat responsible. You see, when we finished college, which part-time job and a promising future, we decided to take our relationship to the next level. That's why we used some money to be able to go on trips to some cities, so we could enjoy ourselves as a formal couple. This period was quite nice because there were no fights and I could stay away from my parents' roof, so I could receive the attention that I was never given and even denied to me. However, this money I mentioned was part of John's operation money, but he didn't reveal it to me until a few days after our tour was over. Of course, there were some hiccups afterward, mostly from me telling him that he did not have to have done it, as I wasn't worth it, but when he dropped that ring at me and got down on that knee after a normal dinner we had that night, I could not say no to him. How could it be that even when I revealed the engagement to my parents, none of them seemed to pay proper attention? It was something along the lines of, "Ah, that's nice. Congratulations, what's the dude's name?" The guy I've been dating for 5 years. Instead, my sister, who was still in college, was being supported in everything, from student loans to the dorm itself, which my parents were paying for in spades. Even for a career like hotel management, and by the way, not that I'm going to discredit it or anything like that, but it's amazing the change that they have between my career and hers at the time we chose them. Mostly because it was imposed on me when she said that she wanted to travel the world, and that alone was enough to win over both our parents. Anyways, my sister had the upper hand, and she never missed a chance to rub it in our faces. Of course, she doesn't do it like she used to when we were kids. She was very snooty about her things, and I still remember one Christmas when she got the gift she wanted, but I didn't because I was, quote, too old for Santa. Even though she kept getting the same gifts until 2 years after she was my age by then. And she started to celebrate precisely the fact that she did get gifts and I didn't. She would rub my face in it, dance and make fun of them. And my parents? Well, she rubbed them in my face, danced and teased me and my parents as well. Well, they were too busy caroling with my drunken uncles in the kitchen. Yes, they have been my life up until then, but I dare say none of it mattered to me. Not of what I just told you have ever gotten bad enough to say off-color things. In itself, I took it for years as bad behavior on part of my parents, but I devalued my situation by saying that many people have gone through a similar or even worse situation. But now I see that this is not so. And it is then that I tell the details of what makes my story particularly horrible. Years ago, my parents went through a rather delicate economic situation because of all the, sometimes somewhat exaggerated excessive spending by my sister. They ended up almost completely in debt to the neighbor's dog. And that's when John and I came along. I know what they'll say, why help your parents when all they have given you is a life full of neglect? But understand that I have a little chicken heart, and they are my parents. Besides, all their friends, when I talked to them, would just tell me to help them because they felt so bad asking me for money when they were aware of my situation with them. In that sense, I thought at some point they were going to apologize for the years and terrible parenting that they gave me. But you know what? Nothing of that sort. So, I gave them some money and they were able to get themselves completely out of debt. But beyond that, it was a thank you, darling. That felt more like it was my blood obligation to support them and look out for them. That felt very bad to me, but now I feel worse about another situation. As I told you, John spent some of the money from his emergency surgeries on our trip and our wedding. And although we managed to recover some of it, in the end it wasn't enough to make ends meet. I asked my parents to help me because I knew from that ugly experience that they've been saving up. I told them, no, I begged them, that it was for my husband, the person I loved the most, but they made 1,001 excuses until I finally got discouraged and started asking for loans like crazy. The surgery was one of the most expensive things since it was bone marrow transplant, which is only surpassed by emergency lung or heart transplants. You don't know how helpless I was when I woke up one day. John next to me in bed crying, saying he couldn't move, much less get up. I was in panic and despair and seeing my parents' unconcerned faces when I would ask for help and they would say, "I'm sorry, honey, we don't have it," or "We're saving up for something else." It was too much for me to take. I wanted to disengage from them and disappear from the planet, and I had to borrow heavily from friends and even campaign on the internet to do it. In the end, we reached the goal and the operation could be done. It was quite a delicate process, but seeing the satisfaction on John's face, the man who only cared about giving me the life I didn't think I deserved, was too much for my heart. My parents and, of course, sister were there during rehab, and while John kept telling me to change my face, the truth is I wasn't the most exciting person in the room when they came here, let alone when I found out what happened. That is the real reason why they couldn't help. As it turns out, there was something more important after all. To buy my sister a damn house. 2 stories, 4 bedrooms, and a modest backyard, and of course 2 bathrooms equipped and with the possibility of a basement. Do you know what my wedding present was? A kitchen mixer. And by the way, I already have a better one. I think it was the biggest slap of reality I've ever had in my life, and when I found out a month after John's surgery, he had to hide the phone and car keys from me because I was so angry with them. I would have told my parents anything morally wrong, from wishing them dead to wishing I've never been their daughter, and I even had a huge upset stomach as a result of it. I mean, they don't have money for their son-in-law, but they do have money to give a super fancy house to their youngest daughter. Guys, you'll excuse me, but this goes beyond jealousy. This is almost grounds for a moral lawsuit. I'll speak to you straight and give you round numbers. John's surgery, $140,000. And the house they gave my sister is valued at almost $200,000. A few things could have happened. Either they could have given her an apartment or something noticeably more comfortable, or they could have loaned us the money and then we could have paid them back. They haven't written to me, and neither has my sister. The most surreal part of the whole thing is that they gave that house to the daughter to graduate 2 years after she was supposed to finish her degree. Because my sister was enough of an idiot to repeat 2 whole years at university. And guys, that is not cheap. I'll admit those were the economic problems they faced, my sister's imbecility, and now they reward her with that. It's super unfair. Update number 1. I'm sorry, guys. I got carried away with my previous post, and I don't know, I felt that if I kept writing, I would get to the part where I would start saying obscenities. Although many like it, I have to remain serene because I know I'm not that. Anyways, I got upset too because they didn't have a valid excuse for not helping. Giving my sister a house was perhaps the biggest slap in the face I've ever gotten in life. John remains too calm, although I've slowly tried to bring him to the point where this is me. Of course, he didn't have to go through the same thing I did because he still had more considerate family. He was an only child, but he grew up with several cousins, and he tells me that it wasn't a problem. Everyone treated everyone the same, always with respect and affection in between, and I can only envy him tremendously. Anyways, I've not spoken to my parents since, but I know how I feel, and they know it. My sister keeps bragging about her new house online, even though my husband was on the verge of death just a few weeks ago. It's perhaps a new definition for the word selfish. In itself, it was nothing necessary for her, but now she had a clear path for any drone to approach her like flies to honey. A pretty girl, single, recently graduated, and a tremendous house? By God, what she's going to do is feast on men in her home. For that's another aspect of her, that she's never known how to say no to a man. I could spend a lifetime saying all the things that I detest and that are objectively wrong with my sister, but I feel that words would not be enough. Anyways, I came here to vent and to let you see that no matter how selfish you think your parents are, you will know that someone, somewhere in the world, there's a girl with even worse parents. I think I mentioned it, but it killed me to see John on the surgery table with the mask and the blank stare, and I felt like I was going to say goodbye forever to the person who was loved and supported me in the most in my whole life. So it's very delicate in the state in which it's in, because it is such an immense rage that it makes the desire for hatred well up on me again. Previously, I've commented on how I used to not get angry with them for the simple fact of being my parents, but I think they broke that privilege, because there's times when even your family have to say no to. Those were some bitter conversations I remember having in high school with my guidance counselors, and they would say the typical, "You should love your parents no matter what because they gave you life, and sacrifice part of theirs to give you a comfortable upbringing." And while I never lacked food on the table, okay, maybe that's true, I never lacked it, there are times when even that doesn't matter if the rest of your upbringing is going to be absolutely horrible. Updates number 2. It's bad to laugh at other people's frustrations and misfortunes, but on this occasion I would be surprised not to. As I found out, no. You know what? I'll explain it. My parents texted me and they took advantage of the fact that I was very busy. They knew that I wasn't going to pay 100% attention to them, and from what I gleaned from the conversation, I learned that my parents did not buy the house outright, but offered a down payment to secure the house at about 50%, with my sister proposing to pay part of the loan that they made in a certain amount of time. In other words, it was going to be a joint purchase, but she needed to come up with a 50% of my parents' loan. That made me feel kinda good. I mean, just a little. Not that much, because it made me believe that at least my sister was able to pitch in so she could have her own house, although that doesn't take away from how selfish they were with us at the time. I also understand why in part they could not help us, and it's because they didn't have the money. I'm not going to put so many alibis for what they did, because they didn't even engage in explaining their situation to us. They just went full-on pandering to my sister and everything she wanted. But guys, that is not the craziest part of it. I forgot to mention something, but it's been about 3 months since my last update, which was when my sister got the house, and my sister has not paid her share of the home at all. She had a really good job, but ended up spending what she had on a fancy new car just to match her fancy new house. Stupid, I know. But what can you expect from her? I'm not surprised by somehow my parents are, who are just starting to see her for who she is, a spoiled brat who doesn't know how to manage her own life. Anyways, the thing is, they contacted me because it turns out that the lost daughter they always had on the side is living a pretty comfortable life. After all, a certain me and a certain husband in the last few months started a company that took off absolutely exorbitantly from one moment to the next. We invested in one of the foreign clients' orders and we hit the jackpot with it. That and the fact that we decided to bet on some emerging businesses from some friends, and they skyrocketed like you don't have an idea. What's more, we went from trying to find money for operations to paying back loans with interest. And that's another update I was going to share with you. John and I have improved in our lives lately. It's funny about all that because I even got to thinking that it was part of the divine heavenly karma that caused us to have so many ugly moments before we could have our resurgence. Just to give you an idea, with just my part of the salary alone, it was enough to get out of debt, and we were saving to be able to buy a new car, but given the circumstances, we want to take a risk and go for a home. Of course, we'll be keeping the car we have for a long time, but we prefer the house because, depending on the place, it would be even more efficient for transportation. Currently, I'd say the only negative aspect of the routine is to take the bus from time to time as not to put too much strain on the car. But it's all for the sake of saving money. We even set a goal of having our first child as soon as we had 3 things: a house, a car, and of course a trip to Europe. After that, welcome pregnancy baby belly. Gosh, I do get sidetracked from the story. Anyways, my parents called me to ask me for money. That's right, they got to the point where, with their hands well and truly washed, they ended up coming to me so they could help pay for my sister's house. Of course, I did not give them an immediate answer, as I told them I'm busy. And wow, I was in the middle of a very important meeting, and I was answering them all the time, yes, yes, no, whatever, no, yes. Then I read the issue, and it dawned upon me. So I was able to secretly laugh at their situation, but no, that's not how things work. It's not like you could have offended me or denied your help in the past and then come to me in the most normal way asking for help. No! Gentlemen, that's not how life works. And if you think there's nothing wrong with that, I recommend you stop reading from now on, because you may not like what's coming. I haven't spoken to my sister at all times, but I know my parents haven't scolded her properly, and that gets on my nerves. If so, her behavior will simply be worse, and it'll be all her fault. Update number 3. I did something wrong. Or good, not bad, but fair, I guess. Depends on the point of view you take, but to tell you a little more, let's go back to a month when my parents had the nerve to ask me to finish paying for my sister's house, after she spent her money on a new car. I refused at their faces flat out, and it was going to be my revenge for everything that they've done to me all my life. But something happened, and the gears of a diabolical plan, I thought, began to turn. First, I had to talk to them again sometime later, calling a small family meeting where I exposed everything, and I mean everything. John wanted to be with me on the occasion, but he was at work, busy with a super important meeting, and I arrived at my sister's house. First time I had seen it from the inside, since all I had seen were pictures online. My parents were there, and they were all half crestfallen because they knew that they had been very hypocritical with me. When I was about to start talking, my sister all at once jumped up and said, Look, we know what you're going to say, that we're terrible people and all that. Can we skip it? I just feel like it's over the top. Well, I have to thank her for saying this, because then I was able to go on to the next part much easier. I start saying that even so, they should understand that it was all wrong and that they would now be paying for the broken dishes, or rather they would not have to, since I took out a piece of paper and put it on the table. Oh, it was nothing, just a small document that said John and I were the owners of the property we were talking about. I had to explain it to them, as they didn't quite understand. When I told them that thanks to the contacts with the seller who sold them the house, I was able to do something. Apparently, she was well aware of the situation, and I don't know about how for more than 3 months the house payment was still due, when at least half the down payment had been promised, and when she realized that my sister had a new car and the purchase had not been finalized, she was able to take legal action. Of course, that was before I arrived. Coincidentally, the bank put both the house and my sister's car up for auction, since she wasn't able to afford them, something my sister was very aware of and did not tell my parents. The seller showed me pictures of the place, and I told her that even though she was my sister, I had not gone to visit her. The truth is that the place was very nice. So, I offered her up 75% of the total payments in advance, with the possibility of paying the rest next month, because that was when, she would trust that the same thing that happened to my other side of the family would not happen again. And I have news for you, today is the end of that month, so officially the house and the car is ours! That's right, you know what they call that? 2 birds, 1 stone. At first my sister gets very upset and refused to take her things out of there, as she said that this was her new home. But I told her in the most coldest voice in the world that the contract on the table said otherwise, and that she better leave before I take legal action. I never felt better in my life. And here we are, in a new house with a new car, but we're thinking of selling this car and having 2 more family focuses. After all, we're already considering going further with this family project. Regarding my family situation, well, since my sister ended up moving in with my parents and sold her car to get out of various expenses, neither of them seemed to apologize to me for everything. In fact, I think it's quite the opposite. And my sister hates my guts for everything that happened. I know, it wasn't right, but you pay for things one way or the other, and I'm just thrilled about our new home. Although we had it deep cleaned very well, because the previous tenants, let's say, were not all that neat. My mom tried to apologize via video call, but then started asking me for money and some consideration, to which I told her the whole situation was earned by them for the kind of people that they were. If they loved my sister so much, then keep supporting her, for surely they can get other loans so they can, get their next house. Meanwhile, John and I are still in our new abode, decorating and able to ride our bikes to work, but we had better not get used to it, as we are soon going to have a new truck that will allow us to get in and out and explore the world much better. Oddly enough, I'm thinking of a cheaper car than the other one my sister had, but much more practical. Well, that's always been me, the one who sees much further ahead. Maybe my family would have understood if they paid more attention to me. Anyways, sorry. Story 2. What's the most painful thing that can happen to a mom? Many will have their opinions, but for me it was the regret of not being able to get that title. I got married years ago, and we decided to start a family from scratch because we were looking forward to it. My family and my husband's family are large, so it's normal to do our bit for the next generations. However, not everything went well, and due to pregnancy complications, I lost my baby when I was only 3 months pregnant. The pain and depression lasted for about 2 years, during which I lost too much weight, my body became really flabby, and I stopped going out. It was only thanks to my husband and my friends that I was able to have a chance to get back on my feet. They helped me get out of their dark threshold, and I give special thanks to my husband because for all the time I lived repressed. After all, I felt that everything would lead to a loss again if we tried to have another baby. He had to be in a drought. Well, all the time, but he just stayed with me because he loved me. And after all that, we decided to try again to have even more intimacy this time. Well, you know what? It worked out well in that regard, and yes, it was a long process, but I did it. I came to feel genuinely happy with myself and my body, and I'd felt that it had been all my fault, and so I didn't want to even dare to try it again. He treated me very well, even paying for psychological therapy, and so we managed to solve the problem. Not only that, in time, something happened that would change the picture absolutely radically, right? Well, you know what? I got pregnant again. It was difficult to accept this fact at the beginning, but thanks to my acquaintances, they made me see that everything could go quite well and that I had nothing to really worry about. I took folic acid and vitamins and did the recommendations of the exercises and went for a walk in the morning before going to work. The doctors even told me that they had never seen a healthier pregnant woman in their entire careers because I was super committed to achieving my goal. And at the rate I was going, I would have a healthy baby. Of course, the only downside was my mind, which was sending me intrusive thoughts and negativity. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, because at some point in the process, because unfortunately history repeated itself. One day, I was with my friends at one of our Sunday tea meetings. We were gossiping, we were laughing, with the occasional comment about the baby. You know, the usual, but at that, I felt a rather sharp twinge between my back and belly. All my alarms went on, remembering things from the past. I kept my cool as much as I could and excused myself to the bathroom with a little assistance. As I sat down and let it all flow, I heard something, and as I wiped, I noticed a bit of blood. I was barely 6 months pregnant, so something was wrong. I can't describe to you how hard I tried not to faint, as the shock of seeing so much blood did not do me any good. I do have a phobia of blood, so my life hasn't been very pretty so far. So I called my friends who came in and took care of me, called my husband, and together we went to the hospital. I felt no more pain, and they took me to the emergency room. Without really understanding why, they gave me anesthesia without even telling me why, and with my husband accompanying me all the time, but leaving me in the dark. The last thing I remember seeing before I fell asleep was him crying. When I woke up, I found myself alone, without my husband by my side, without my bulging belly, and without my baby. I lost him. I don't remember how long I was alone in that room, but it was long enough to put me into a lifetime of reflection. In that short space of time, I cried, and I got angry, I got depressed even. And I was rethinking so many things, and it seemed like I had lived 8 lifetimes in that instant. When a nurse came in again, after about an hour or so, and noticed that I was awake, he sat down next to me and explained the situation. It was indeed the baby I lost. Something in my spine had come loose and made the baby's position quite uncomfortable, to the point of, well, I don't want to give the details, but the point is it's ugly, very ugly, and all my fault for not having done anything. Even if they told me that it was something accidental and that it had nothing to do with me, well, you know how the human mind is, specially designed to treat you as the enemy in these situations. I don't know why the tears were slow to come. Maybe, just maybe, it's that I felt I had to assimilate the sadness, but having done it for a long time, I want to believe that I adapted to that scenario. Then, my husband arrived and the annoying visits began. The only one who did not visit me was my sister Alina, which I found quite rude because even some cousins from another state came by to see me. Anyways, everyone showed their support and generosity with gifts, but I remember being in a very neutral state. Very gray, if I could describe it with a color. I felt nothing. The pain was somewhat light in my stomach, but not enough to distract me from the pain in my soul. I felt unwomanly that I had failed at that what I was born to do. But I had to invoke my teachings on state of mind control again so that I would not fall back into depression. Since then, I've had some strong conversations with my husband, telling him that he does deserve a woman who can please him with what he wants and that he probably won't have any more sexual appetite after that. This was perhaps an exaggeration, and I feel it may be milder than the previous time because of a serious factor. I became infertile. It's hard for me to write this in tears because it just feels so final, but it's just the way my insides were damaged by the last 2 surgeries that I simply can't harbor another life. It's not pretty to think though, and although there are alternatives, you don't see them at the moment and you only think of throwing hatred at yourself and cursing yourself. I'd better write to you another time as I'm not feeling so well, and next time I will tell you about my sister, as there's been a few things about her that I have not quite liked. But until then, I hope you are well. Have a nice day, afternoon, and night. Update number 1. Well, I feel better now with more encouragement than yesterday because now I feel that the subject is a little more apart. It's about my sister Alina, who, let's just say, hasn't been the best person in the whole process of my pregnancy and losses. At first, during the first pregnancy, she was excited about having a new nephew, but after what happened, she put a bad face on everything, considering it was all my fault. If it's bad enough that you're sabotaging your mind, imagine when someone else does it. It's like a little devil helping a demon and vice versa, and I never even dared to talk to her, but my parents did. They reprimanded her for being mouthy. She's always been like that though, and her mouth has no lock. Since she was little, she was always the gossipy one in her class, and the one who wasn't afraid to tell people things to their face. But that is combined with the fact that she is not very sensitive in her thinking, and she doesn't usually come up with very clear ideas about what she wants to express. When my first loss happened, she came to a point. I think it was after the first year where she told me super bluntly, I should smile, life goes on. I couldn't stay in the sea of depression, otherwise I would drown. And worse, I would drown my husband, my parents, my friends, and her too. At first I thought she was right, but so far everyone has said that she was too insensitive. And I feel like it's worse this time because she's recently married a man that she's barely been dating for a year. Too hasty, if you ask me, and started planning her own family. She's too impulsive, and I feel like this is also her doing, just to weigh my situation within the family, which I really dislike. She hasn't even stopped bragging once about all the wedding stuff, and I feel like this is partly a kind of payback for my situation overshadowing her wedding theme a bit, you'd say. Her event was beautiful. Her husband comes from a middle-class family, but he did everything he could to accommodate Alina's every whim, which isn't few, and give her everything of her dreams. But soon after I had my accident, she stopped posting on her social networks, quote, out of respect. But you know what? I just knew deep down that she was upset that I had made her excitement pass so quickly. Since then, I haven't had the same relationship with her. We only see each other at family lunches, and I feel like she avoids seeing me when I go as a surprise to my parents' house. I'll explain. Her husband's traveling a lot for some businesses, and every time he does, she goes to my parents, but when I happen to be there, she looks for any excuse not to be there. Moreover, she's been stopped going out to our Sunday get-togethers with friends. And when I asked her at one of the lunches, she just told me that she did it, quote, because now it's become a support club for you, referring to me. Well, I have 2 miscarriages. What else do you want me to do? Laugh, jump for joy, enjoy life? It's so disgusting, and I don't know if it's because I'm hormonal or something. But when I think about it, I can't help but feel a combination of hate, anger, and annoyance, frustration even, and sadness. So, one moment I'm like, my little sister, why is she talking to me like that? And the next, I'm going to kill her. But hey, I guess that's par for the course in my situation, right? As I said, my parents have tried to talk to her, but it's to no use. It's like talking to a wall, and I have a sneaking suspicion that should she get pregnant, she'll have no qualms about making the news the most mega spectacular event in the world. I'd say something like, and I should still have consideration for her. Her time has passed, so goodbye. If you guys think that's kind of insensitive, yes it is, but I don't dare to say anything more to her about it. To some extent, I feel like I've been stealing her thunder, and if she wants to do something on her own, go ahead. But don't let her try to minimize my pain, because the last thing I've wanted is for people to see me as a victim. I haven't liked her since I was little, but I know who she is. So, she wants to get as much attention as possible, that's for sure. I would also be frustrated that her husband is always on the road and just looking for ways to be present in other people's lives, but to me, that's not a life. But as they say, to each its own. Update number 2. If I was bad before, I'm so much worse now. What I was so afraid of happened because only 6 months after my loss, Alina announced her pregnancy, and it was in the middle of a Sunday meeting. She did it in such a spontaneous, dynamic, and joyful way that even my friends asked me afterward if it did not bother me. Whether it bothered me or not, I cannot do a thing about it. It's her life and she decides how to live it, but I won't deny that it did hurt me just a little bit. I've seen a future where she does get to have her baby, and I'll just stay and visit it so I can have a moment with them. If I can't even be a mother, I will at least try to be a good aunt to them. Of course, they won't be deprived as their father is working well enough to support the whole family. It's been almost a week since I've seen my sister's husband, and it has been revealed to me that he won't be in the country for at least 3 months. If I could be more honest with you, Alina's pregnancy is a bit unpleasant for me, but it's not for the reasons one would expect. I say it's because Alina herself confessed to us that she stopped taking her birth control pills, and that she told her husband to do it at least 4 days in a row before her trip, to make everything safe. In the end, it worked out, and I would like to be a surprise for him. For him to come back to see her potbelly as some sort of housewarming gift. I say I dislike it because, well, a gift like a new wallet or a watch is fine, but guys, we're talking about a pregnancy. Even if they're looking forward to it, doing it without their consent still has to be wrong in a sense, right? Anyways, the more that I think about it, the more I keep repeating to myself that it's none of my business. Anyways, guys, everyone's happy for her, and they're already making arrangements for baby showers, gender reveal parties, setting up one of the rooms in their house and my parents' house for the baby. Everything that I went through was taken away from me. Sorry if I'm just being pitiful at this point. It's just that I would have liked all of this at some point. While I won't get on Alina's bad side and attacking her or resenting her, not that it's even easy for me to do so, but at least I won't be a shoe horse in her way. She's happy and excited to the point where she's been talking to me again, for advice on prepartum training. That's the only nice part I can salvage from all this, because otherwise, I'm still upset about the previous treatment. I gave her the pointers she asked for, and she thanked me. But so far, I haven't seen her start to put things into practice. The last warning I gave her, she didn't take it well, and this goes for all of you readers, is that she should start doing everything early, before her belly starts to show, because if she doesn't, then she'll have a hard time doing it when she's already a few pounds heavier. Not that I'm the world's foremost expert on pregnancy, obviously, but I feel that if my little piece of heaven was taken away from me, it must have been for something larger, or at least I'd like to think of it that way. Update number 3. Bomb. Something just happened, and I feel that if I don't tell you, I'm going to explode. I talked to my sister's husband, and I'll tell you that everything's going to come crashing down for her very, very soon. It turns out my brother-in-law is infertile. Yeah, just like you read it. Oh my goodness, I feel like I'm actually going to faint, guys, but it's because I can't hold this information in for any longer. You see, I was talking to my brother-in-law recently, because Alina's birthday's coming up, and he wanted to give her a present from a distance since he didn't know what to give her. Married too soon, obviously. And since Alina's other friends are very gossipy, he preferred just to go with me right off the bat. We talked very nicely, and he let me know he was not going to be coming back for months. I felt a little pain thinking that for months that man would not know that he was going to be a father. But in the end, he wouldn't be, because of a small, slight oversight on my part that I've been avoiding the baby thing, and it crossed my mind to tell him, only to ruin Alina's surprise while it was going to be a very despicable act on my part. I felt that at least I would have my longed-for revenge. It was then, as if by mere coincidence, that she brought up the subject of my baby. Well, I was going to stop him at that moment, but then he threw in a sentence that threw me for a loop.
Oh, yeah, well, despite everything that's happened to you, OP, I consider you a warrior. I've had my own struggle in a way, and well, yeah, I wish someday I could have a baby too.
I hadn't quite understood what he said, and I said, yeah, it might happen soon. And it was as if the guy had broken down in front of me, and after a long silence, he said to me, "No, I don't think I can, because confessing it, I can't have babies." I didn't know what to say. My first thought was it's going to be a miracle that the man who could not have children was going to have one. A miracle the opposite of my experience, and I was about to reveal all, but he told me that he had an emergency vasectomy when he had finished college because of a condition that, coupled with the operation, made it impossible for him to have children. So, I ask you, what would you have done in my position? Just as I was about to tell him about Alina, my mouth closed and he kept talking. He told me he would talk to Alina to mediate the possibility of adoption. Although he didn't know how she would take it, he hadn't even told her. He confessed to me that he decided not to say anything to her from the beginning of the relationship because he felt that she was going to abandon him by not being able to give him a child. He said that as a result of my own experience, she gave a lot of consideration to having a baby, in the end opted for the idea that she did. I connected wires in my mind and hit on everything. My sister's very random one had been having a secret affair, and now she's pregnant by her lover? When her husband finds out, everything will go to hell. That will be something worth recording, so I say to myself, and that's when I came up with the idea. Alina's baby shower will only be a few months away, and her husband won't arrive for another 2 or 3 months, and in the meantime he might find out about her offspring by surprise. I'd better not say anything, and I'll tell you when everything's been successfully accomplished. Update number 4. Everything you do comes back to you. Today I can vouch for that fact that this phrase is fully true. And in what a way, ladies and gentlemen. Mind you, I don't regret anything I did, even though I showed myself as having done it accidentally. A few months passed after my sister Alina's pregnancy announcement, and everything was going great until I found out that her husband was actually infertile, and now everyone was going to find out about the infidelity. The party began to be prepared as if it was going to be a real caravan, inviting as many people as we possibly could, including our little Sunday group. Everybody wondered why Alina did not bother to reveal the affair to her husband, but she wanted it to be a surprise. And that's where I had my hook. I pretended I never heard the information Alina had given me the silent treatment these days, and if she talked to me, it was only through mediaries, usually my parents or our girlfriends, to keep me in the loop. Everything but the big reveal, and if she wanted to exclude me from her big moment, well, it was time for a good sisterly moment. The party was good. Baby-themed, games, dynamics, gifts, the huge. A few words were given, and that's when I made my own words. Some of her friends were supportive of surprising Alina with a video call from her husband, so now I could have somebody to share the guilt with once it was all over. When it was her turn to say a few words, pretending she was having trouble getting up despite being only 3 months pregnant, we started to pick up our phone. She began by thanking everybody present for their warmth and generosity, and the speech went on in a very emotional way. And I swear that even if it was for a millisecond, I was a little embarrassed to go through with the plan. I kept telling myself that she's my sister, and it was her big moment. So it was best to stop us in the act. However, the direction of the conversation changed, and when I entered the subject, she mentioned me, punctuating my losses in front of everyone. I was seething with rage at the time, so I don't quite remember what she said. I just know that it was something along the lines of, "I will extend the family, and life always finds a way." Well, isn't that from alluding to the fact that her children's lives were more worthwhile than mine? If anybody focused on my face during the video, they would have caught the shallowest, fakest smile ever on my face. There was no doubt in my mind what a wonderful moment that was going to be. That's when Alina dropped a bomb. "I don't just want to mention the health of my baby, or should I say babies." Apparently she's pregnant with twins. She'd been to the gynecologist just 2 days before and revealed to him that she was expecting healthy twins, news that even was dumbfounded by me. Well, while everybody was stunned with happiness, I was stunned in the sense that this was going to be the worst thing ever. Way more than I expected. It was then that I stood up with one of her friends, and thank goodness that she spoke first. She revealed the surprise, and I followed with a third friend raising her phone to show that she was on a video call with her husband. From what little I could see on the screen, he was red. He was in tears almost, but not the gesture of a person crying from happiness. He was just staring at the screen, stunned, almost without blinking. Even I was scared, and I would not have liked to be my sister at that moment. Then Alina spoke, greeting her husband, and I thought for a moment that he was going to ask them to take Alina to a private place to talk. But when we gave her the phone, within seconds, her reaction changed. And that's when I knew that it started. The next thing I remember was seeing Alina walking into an adjoining room with a straight face. It was hard to make out, but I knew her husband was yelling, causing some people to come and confront them. One of her friends, the rude one, even spoke badly to her husband, telling him, who did he think that he was to talk to Alina like that? Well, he replied, and in such a perfect answer, I don't think I will ever forget, "I'm an idiot, that's what I am." And after that, all downhill. The party canceled within minutes, and with many people not knowing exactly what happened and why the mother was suddenly crying inconsolably. Well, there was a long conversation between her and her husband and her friends, but then she was locked out of the call with the husband saying that he would come back to see us only to sign a divorce paper, and that he, quote, "wished my sister well with her twin babies." The part left me speechless, and I don't know what you guys think, whether you see this as too abrupt or too mild. Let's see. I went through a rough patch, thanks in part to her, and even at the last instant she kept taunting me, so I feel like nothing, well, not everything that happened was wrong. Besides, sooner or later she would have figured it out. Let's just say it was thanks to me that it was sooner, saving the poor guy a few expenses, right? I haven't heard from Alina since, and I'm writing this from home before getting ready for bed. I feel that at least today I was able to sleep better. Final update. When I logged back into this platform, I was very surprised by the avalanche of accumulated messages. I think it's quite crazy how receptive I was to my story. I mean, people just like gossip, maybe that's it. And so, as much as it pains me to accept it, I feel I must bring this to a closure. But do it on a positive note, right? Currently, my family's divided into 2 camps, mine and Alina's. I will say her first. Her side is those who still think and talk to her after the news of her infidelity was made public. Everyone knew about it, as It was a rumor in the city of this magnitude. It even escalated to a place like her workplace, affecting her job. It sounds rather ironic, right? But, well, since after having criticized me for so long, playing the victim and having to face so much scorn, now she's going through the same thing, feeling much worse even? The twins were born healthy and with a dark complexion more than normal, so sooner or later they were going to find out about the event, and even if I managed to keep the surprise for a few more months, don't believe it, I'm still shocked by the way the events unfolded. But what I did was karma, that sooner or later would have come to anyways, although maybe I made it come a little early. Now she's living with my parents who help her with the twin babies. The baby's real father was gone and kept no further contact with Elena, and well, those in the wrong always get their punishment, or at least that's how I like to believe it. The other point I was going to make was me, who, by the way, is doing much better now. Perhaps because of the whole Elena thing, as bleak as it may seem. It's funny how other people's experience end up peppering you with experience. And it is, or has, made me appreciate life in a way that I have not for years. So, exclusively for you who have been accompanying me all along the way, I reveal to you that I'm going to be a mom. Albeit in a more alternative way, my husband and I are going to start the adoption process, which will allow us to have a boy or a girl, so we can have a complete family. It was a somewhat difficult decision which required a lot of conversations, and in the end we opted for this since we saw that it was an option that we could satisfy several parties with. That has me very excited and very, very, very deep down, I have to admit that this situation will make Alina very upset. She'll say something like, "Why don't they better help me with the twins if they have so much money and energy? But I'd rather keep that little secret to myself. My family doesn't know yet I'm adopting, and when we'll tell them, it'll be a bombshell. But until then, best wishes to you and Alina even. Anyways, see ya. My name's Liam, and I was excited to get married to my girlfriend Ariel, but unlike me, she was not fortunate enough to have a loving family where my birth mom and dad both showered love upon me. I had a perfect family with a healthy relationship with both of them, and so did my parents, and I had always been grateful for that after witnessing Ariel's parents who were selfish and greedy, especially her stepmother Laura and her sister Betty, who had been terrible towards her since her father Jacob brought them into their family. They constantly excluded her and mistreated her, and Ariel also had a dislike for them but only stayed in the same place because of her dad, who was in ill health condition, and his pension covered all the medical expenses. So, thankfully, Laura and Betty did not have as bad of a relationship with her dad as they did with Ariel, or things might have become worse for her. I had not known Ariel for long before, but only knew that she was the person who was brutally honest to everyone and would not think twice to stand against her own people if she found them doing anything wrong to others. She was the most unbiased person who had the courage to stand up against wrongdoing. And this is the trait of Ariel that had caused a conflict between Lara and Betty, because Betty doesn't take Betty's unreasonable action seriously. And Lara always sides with Betty because she's oblivious to her daughter's love. But this trait was the only reason my parents liked Ariel. My mom is very fond of Ariel, started looking forward to making her part of our family as soon as she met her. And my mom is the reason that she motivated me to marry her, because mom finds a reflection of herself in Ariel. They had a great bond together, and I was glad that Ariel had finally found the love of motherhood when she was with mom, and I want her to give family love to her. So one day, with the support of my mom and dad's agreement, I asked if she would marry me. We were all glad that she agreed, and she invited me to dinner because she did not know how her family would react, since she's never bothered to share anything with them. This is the first time that she's brought somebody home, so she doesn't trust how her parents will react to it. To begin with, one step at a time, she asked only me to come to her place, and the next day I visited, and I understood her reason for not calling me along with her family. I was looking at some alien creature. My future mother-in-law Laura exaggerated in front of Ariel's dad about how darling Ariel had been to bring boys home. skeptical questions about her. She asked me some uncomfortable questions like why I like Ariel, what's so special about her, why I want to marry her in the first place, and how much I make in money. She was surprised to know that I was from a well-settled upper-middle-class family with a posh background. She gave a backhanded compliment to Ariel for catching a big fish. Well, she didn't even hesitate to say that she would share my stuff with her family as well, and she also dragged her daughter into every conversation, trying to portray her as an ideal daughter, and Betty was on the same line as her mother. She was trying so hard to impress that it had become downright awkward. Not only that, Laura asked if I had any brothers or acquaintances for Betty, or by any chance if I would change my mind. She would be glad to take Betty's hand instead of Ariel's. She said that she was very thankful that love is blind and that I've chosen Ariel to be the wife. Or she would have remained unmarried with the bitter tongue and unruly behavior she had. I agreed, saying that love as pure as motherhood is also blind, and she took the hint and changed the topic instead. She bought me the tea and the new crockery. She said that this is the most ancestral crockery she owns. It is an antique, but I knew it was fake, branded cheap one, and I did not mind correcting her. She did not end up with that. She talked about cost and pricing so much that she kept on telling the prices of almost everything she owns. Her purse, her dress, the curtains, the covers, you name it. Almost everything was told as doubled as it seemed to be. I knew everything she owned was fake and cheap, and I've seen Ariel trying to cut the cost of her expenses to manage her finances. I knew she struggled hard to complete her education. It did not take me enough time to know that Lara and Betty were both very materialistic people. They tried to show off as much as they could to portray themselves as well as possible. They were not at all humble, accepting the modest lifestyle, but whatever means they could. That was only Ariel, who does not bother to seek the approval of others in terms of her finances and social status. Laura and Betty's world revolves around money, and hence they were more than excited to welcome me and make me part of their family as long as I would act according to their wishes. Ariel was a little embarrassed by her stepmother and sister's behavior. She also introduced me to her dad, and her dad seemed okay to me until I knew that he mostly sided with his wife and stepdaughter. I thought of inviting Ariel's parents to my place in the upcoming week, and I waited for them to come, but before that, I told my mom everything about Laura, Betty, and her dad. They were disappointed to find such a selfish and greedy family in Ariel. On the day of the dinner, when Ariel's family stepped into our place, Lara and Betty dressed in their best clothes, and Betty had outdone herself with so much over-the-top dressing sense, along with Lara, as if the celebration were meant for them. They were quite overdressed for the occasion of their own family member, Ariel, who was their daughter and sister and the reason that we were having the occasion in the first place. The way that they dressed almost matched their behavior, as they tried their best to steal the limelight from Ariel and made everything about themselves by sidelining her. The dishes and the arrangements were made especially for Ariel's taste, but they were quite judgmental about it. But my mom and I hardly paid any attention because we knew Ariel, and she did not make an effort to come up in between or cut them off. She was enjoying her dinner, and conversation with my dad as Laura was dragging her dad as well in between. Both me and Mom found Betty to be a spoiled brat when she snapped at her own home servant for serving her the wrong drink because she was confused with multiple orders at the same time. Ariel instructed her to apologize in an instant, but she didn't listen to her. So Ariel apologized on her behalf, and Betty still believed that she did no wrong, instead argued that servants are meant to be treated this way. Ariel snapped, saying that servants have more income than she could earn in an entire year, and yet they're humble enough to serve her. Betty furiously threw her meal and stormed out, and Ariel followed, trying to stop her. But after some time, Betty came back, apologized for losing her temper, and asked if she could have a hand on my Mercedes. I figured she must have seen it parked outside my house, and she wants to have a ride. I refused, saying I could not risk putting such things in her hands, and Laura sided with her, saying I needed to worry not at all, and a little scratch won't hurt me. Well, Betty added that she was just asking for a ride and not the car, at least. After seeing how many I own, I refused, saying she should just stop keeping an eye on other people's stuff. I could not hold back from saying that she was greedy, and Laura got furious and took Betty and her husband along with her, saying that I'm too rude and a rich brat to share things with his future sister-in-law, and they left Ariel behind them. Ariel, who was disappointed by their behavior, asked for an apology to my parents numerous times and said she tried to talk it out. I wish I could support Ariel in the matter, so I volunteered to come along, but she said that she would think of some way to convince them. I was confident that she could. Mom, on the other hand, already disliked Betty, doesn't mind her existence as long as she can get married to Ariel and make her daughter-in-law. Update number 1. Hey guys, things were not turning out as I expected them to. I thought it would be easier to get her parents convinced, but things were heading in a very different direction. I got a call from Ariel in a day or two, and she sounded like, a little happier this time, saying that we could convince her parents as they have an anniversary party, and it's the best time to mend things with them and finalize our dates for marriage, or get engaged as soon as possible. I agreed with her and called my parents to schedule them to meet them, and Mom, though not fond of her family, came for Ariel and my sake. It was futile for Dad to deal with my bratty and full-off self-stepmother and stepsister. He said that he would only be bothered by marriage and would not want to waste his time interacting with them, and I didn't force them after all. My dad's time was important, as people wait months to get a meeting with him. On our way to their home, Mom had already warned me that they both had their eyes on the money and wealth. I should stay careful around both of them, and I agreed with her and parked my car in front of their house. We reached sooner than expected as we were on time and found Laura and Betty scribbling over the expensive turkey that they had bought and cooked dinner with, saying that it's the first time they've enjoyed such an expensive steak at my place, and now to show off they have to cut their weekly budget to serve turkey? And that too, being selfish, denied them the blessings of a life to share with them. Betty complained about the car I owned and refused to borrow it for a ride, and Laura thought that she had a plan to think it over. At least they deserve a share in their son-in-law's wealth, right? After all, she is his mother-in-law and deserves to be treated like such. And they should spend some on the wedding if they can afford to do so. My mom and I listened to a bit of it when my phone rang. It was asking me where I had been, and I rang the bell, but it was not working, so I knocked and found her standing. Ariel welcomed us warmly and greeted us like a great host. Laura and Betty did not invite many people because they did not have a budget to flaunt right now since the small-scale business was going through a loss. They hardly invited anyone except us, though they were more than eager to show off their rich son-in-law and his family. They wanted to save a surprise for the wedding as they were superstitious about things like evil eye, etc. When Laura hosted my mom, she asked about our plan for our wedding and engagement. My mom kept in mind the conversations in which she asked to finalize the engagement for the time being and later decided about the wedding arrangements. This was the best way to bypass this wedding conversation because I wanted to discuss that with Ariel in private after knowing the intentions of her family members, and stopped Mom from bringing up the topic. We finalized the engagement, but Laura could not hold back and said that she wants a grand wedding with a maximum number of people invited. After all, Ariel's getting married to such a rich guy, but since their business was going through a rough phase, they could not afford it by themselves, indirectly hinting that we should pay for it. Before we could answer, Ariel intervened, saying that, that could be decided later on and that we would discuss the details privately. Laura and her husband were more than happy with the gifts that we bought for their anniversary. Betty hoped that she would get something, but I said the occasion was meant for them, and there's no point in her asking for a gift. Betty had instant hatred for me at that point, and she made a toast that she would love to arrange the wedding for her dearest sister all by herself, because she wants the wedding to be perfect and can't wait to be her bridesmaid. I suggested going for a small wedding because I would like to save for our future. She said that it would cost more than my Mercedes that I already own. No more, she promises. I told her to hold her tongue because she was crossing her limit, but she was drunk, and there was no point in arguing. That evening when I reached home, I got a call from the promotion of my job, and I was transferred to Europe for it. I could apply for it within a month to initiate the procedure. I was excited but tensed about the wedding arrangements where my in-laws were waiting to extract the most wealth from me. Update number 2, 3 days later. Hey guys, some people are getting on my nerves, right? And the more you try to get rid of them by submitting to their demands, the more they find new ways to exploit you. Please help, so this is how it went. I wanted to get married sooner as I was running out of time, and my in-laws were trying to exploit the opportunity. It was Betty's birthday, and I was invited on her birthday as well, and I didn't want to go, but Mom insisted on it, and Ariel was already at the door to pick me up. She knew that I was unwilling, but she was only eager to spend some time with me and hoped to convince her dad at least to agree to the small wedding. Ariel almost dragged me along when Betty insisted on inviting me along, and she could not figure out why. They stood at the bus stop to catch a bus to reach the restaurant, and while Betty taunted me that my cars were kept for the showcase and not for the ride, I did not want to snap at her since it was her day, and I drove them to the destination in my car. They've booked a fine dining restaurant with a 5-course meal beginning with an expensive champagne, and I somehow suspected from their looks that they already don't have enough money to buy mineral water. Forget a 5-course meal. That was all going to be pushed upon me. So, I texted Ariel quickly that her sister and mom don't have money with them, and Ariel was surprised by this. Somehow sneaking into Betty's clutch and finding it empty, she could not control her anger and snatched it from Laura as well, only to find none of them had any money. Enraged by this, she canceled all the orders that were previously placed and paid for whatever amount that she could afford, even if it wasn't enough. I came to her rescue and paid the rest, which was more than half. It had created a scene among the people when her family turned up without cash at a restaurant. Embarrassed by her family, she leaves the restaurant after apologizing to me. I followed her outside and told her that I had eavesdropped on the conversation between Laura and Betty about their plans when me and Mom both arrived to meet them on the anniversary of her parents. They were planning on getting what they deserved, like shares in my wealth, and blaming Ariel for being selfish enough to let them enjoy the benefits of my money. Ariel was furious and wanted to confront them, but I stopped her, saying that we did not have enough time to deal with this because I'm going to get transferred to Europe soon and I only have a month to apply for it. So it would be better that we get our court marriage arranged since they're not going to agree to a small-scale wedding and we just need to have some savings to start our new life in a new country. Ariel did not argue with me on that, and I told her that until they agree, we should instead get a court marriage to escape their evil plotting or whatever they're up to. So they could not create any obstacle to our wedding. Ariel agreed with me, and I talked to her to arrange a lawyer. My engagement day was coming very soon, and our in-laws were already preparing to create problems in our marriage. I saw Laura, Betty, and her dad coming out of a restaurant. Betty was mad at me, kicked my car, and broke its headlight, leaving it with dents and scratches since wine was already in effect. I held Ariel to not lose it or scream at her on the streets, unlike Betty, who was already doing that. Before engagement, Laura came with Betty to my place, saying that she could not get Ariel engaged since I had not stopped Ariel from paying the restaurant bill, and since it was Betty's birthday, he could have paid it for her special day. I reasoned that they should not have tried to take advantage of me by trapping me in a situation to pay. Instead, if they had asked me nicely, I would have happily arranged the party for her. Laura, being an opportunist, came up with a list of items required for Betty and Ariel. They were on the jewelry, clothes, and ring shopping list, and she said that she wanted an engagement to be perfect for the first daughter's wedding, but she could not even afford the bare minimum. At least I should be responsible for my future wife and her family. Reluctantly, I signed a check to them to cut off the drama because engagements will be happening in 2 days. Laura told me not to tell this to Ariel, and I agreed, but denied buying them rings since I had bought them myself. They agreed and were ready to prepare for my engagement and looked forward to me being their son-in-law as long as I would not act according to their wishes. Update number 3. Hey guys, thankfully I have finally gotten rid of my toxic in-laws who were trying to scam me out of the money, and by following your suggestions and not trusting them, I've saved myself a lot of trouble, and I thank you for that. On the day of the engagement, I expected Ariel to be dolled up and looked her best after paying the amount for her, but it was the complete opposite. I saw that Ariel had only done the bare minimum, and Lara and Betty were really dolled up in the most expensive outfits, along with professional makeup by a beautician. There was no way that one could recognize Ariel as a bride-to-be or a fiancé. I was dissatisfied with enragement, and the money I had given them was not spent on the person I paid for. So, well, I was furious, but there was no use in showing that, and Mom was also disappointed, and I learned that I could not trust them even a bit. We got engaged and were waiting eagerly for the wedding bells to ring. Betty came to me and apologized for her misbehavior and said she would consider her apology accepted if I allowed her to plan the wedding, and she's given me the information of the planner that she's arranged because he is her boyfriend, and she wants to bring him the first client by bringing Ariel and me as their first deal. Ariel, having a soft corner, wanted trying to apologize and told her to nail the details and finalize it. I told her to mail it to me and I would revert to her later, although I was not going to. So I told my dad to find more about him, and I was already occupied. Dad pulled out his contacts to learn about him. The next morning, as the marriage dates were not finalized by Ariel's parents, I called her up to come in for the court marriage without telling them. I told her we had reached the place where Mom and Dad as witnesses got us married. It was quicker than I anticipated, and after it was done, Dad received a phone call from his friends to ask for help as they have been scammed by the wedding planner, who had been taking the advance from them through a check payment, and now he refuses to answer calls for them. Dad looked worried about him because he was his close friend, so I was bothered and asked for a picture. My jaw dropped when I saw it. I checked my mail and it was the same picture of the so-called wedding planner. Ariel was also shocked to find Betty involved with him, and we both reached home hoping to meet the wedding planner, and I talked to Betty about him. Ariel refused to believe that Lara was involved in this, but it was obvious why Betty constantly kept on targeting me and trying to get an advantage. And when she said that he was her boyfriend, she had known him for quite some time to know that he was into things like this, and there's chances that Lara must have known about it too, which is why she would not let any opportunity leave her to take undue advantage in the name of being relatives, so we had a talk. When we arrived, we met the wedding planner who was already home, and Lara, not knowing that we were aware of it, said that he was her known acquaintance, famous for his exquisite arrangements, and he had agreed to plan the wedding as per our wishes, to make the wedding small. But they agreed on one condition, that the in-laws demanded we let the entitled sister-in-law decide our wedding decor, or they would just cancel our wedding. So, me and my fiancé looked at each other and just laughed, because we knew they were going to do something like that. And Ariel, finally convinced that Lara and Betty were involved in this, decided to call the cops, along with these other people who had been scammed by him previously. Ariel confirmed why Betty was excited for the wedding, and it was found out that she wanted to take the money in the name of the scam, because I was too selfish to share my leisure with them, as they never felt that they belonged to his family and only considered him a part of them. Some say that loss hurts until the day of the funeral. But that's when the struggle really begins. I was married for at least 12 years to Rena. 12 years with ups and downs, which at least we were largely enjoyable, and left me with a couple of beautiful children. 10-year-old Lynn and 6-year-old Mickey. We were a model family with only weakness being its leader. Me. I admit that I suffered some alcohol excesses during these last few years, and I used to go drinking with the boys at the tavern late into the night. And although I didn't usually come home drunk since I never liked being fully in drunk mode anyways, at least the latent concern was still there. I'm not an alcoholic, not by a long shot, instead of being one of those guys who come home screaming and perhaps beating his wife when they do arrive. I became quiet, passive, and, well, just like to meditate. I used to come and sneak up to bed where Rena would greet me with a kiss and a scolding for being so late. In that sense, I felt I failed her a little. I tried to quit, but the feeling of group ecstasy with my friends was simply too strong. It's not that I didn't enjoy her or the kids. It was just another aspect of my life that I wanted to keep alive. We got married very young, and I feel like I didn't experience those moments I should have at my age. So, if I wasn't technically hurting anyone, I felt like I wasn't doing anything wrong. And that's when Rena's illness started. It all started with a simple cough, no big deal. But it starts to get complicated by the rainy season, and she was prone to seasonal sickness. But this time things went from bad to worse. We started with soups, juices, teas, vitamins, and rest, but everything seemed to have the opposite effect. Her nose was red from so much shaking, and even the kids were helping Mommy recover. There were times when, it was a little difficult to write this in tears. There were times when Rena would get better and could even get out of bed, but it was only for short periods of time. And then it would get worse to the point where I would have to miss work to take care of her. The children would go to school worried and hoping to find their mother fully recovered when they returned home. The one aspect of this whole experience, though, that I'm mildly grateful for was that it did not happen at Christmas time, as a memory of that caliber would have been devastating for us all. Anyways, I'm writing all this to comment on Rena's passing 2 weeks ago. I had to work up the courage to be able to express this all, as it was 12 years at her side. From the time we were in college until the last of her days, giving the purest love I could ask for. Out of it came our children who still cry for her at night, and I can't blame them. She was a great woman, a great person, and she will surely remain in our memories. Still, I can't help but feel a little bad for all the times when my vices got the most out of me, forgetting the responsibilities at home, so many things I currently want to tell her and I can't. So all I can do is keep the family afloat, doing my best in raising them as Rena were present. I don't know what'll change in our lives over the next few weeks, but I hope I can make the kids not feel the loss as her parents as, expected. Tomorrow I'm taking them to their grandmother's, Rena's mother, for a warm visit, then we'll go to my mother's maybe next weekend. We all need support at this time, and if you've ever been in a similar position, my only advice so far is to seek backing from those closest to you. Map out a life plan, and even if it all looks difficult, persist for a greater reward. We all need someone to tell you, "Come on, man, you can do it." And I just don't want to believe I lost that one person. Update number 1 month later. Hey guys, it's been about a month since Rena's departure, and boy, have things changed. Not very well, to say the least, and Rena had a sister that I did not get along very well with. Molly. She's older by a couple years, and ever since we started dating, she's been a detractor of the relationship I had with Rena. When we started dating, she would tell her that I wasn't mature enough to have a relationship. When I proposed to her, she told her sister that it was a mistake because we were too young, and when she got pregnant with Lynn, she told her that it was best to give up, as it was screwing up her life too fast in short term. So, she didn't like me at all from the beginning. Now it turns out that this woman dares to want to take my children away from me and for her to have full custody of them after Rena's death. That's right, just as you read it. She wants to separate me from Lynn and Mickey, claiming that I'm not fit to raise them on my own, and she talked to Rena frequently and poisoned her mind with various ideas about me. I remember once she told her that she had been seeing me come out of a brothel, which prompted Rena to make a video call. Upon answering it, she realized it was absolutely false. Molly must have been mistaken for someone else because I was attending to a client at a private dinner. I don't know if I mentioned it, but I'm a lawyer, and sometimes I take on very important clients with whom I have to look as polished as possible. This led to a marital conflict, as Molly had led her sister to believe that I was cheating on her, or that I was at least in the middle of a racy situation, Nothing could be further from the truth. I would venture to say that Molly was one of the low points of our relationship, and that's a factor I cannot and should not change. After all, she's family, and they remain even after your time on Earth is over, and in this case, but to consider myself unfit to raise my own kids when I've done nothing to endanger or neglect them, it's irrational. I tried to talk to my mother-in-law, but now she changed her attitude towards me. She used to be a gracious lady, and while she never got a great comment regarding my relationship with her daughter, she also never objected at any time, respecting her daughter's decisions. I don't understand how she let herself be manipulated so darn easily. Although, considering she has lost one of her daughters, she will do whatever the other one tells her to do, I bet. And it happened in the most informal way possible, through a phone call. And not only that, while the kids were in class. So I got a call from Molly herself. There she said to me in the coldest possible tone, "Look, we need to talk. Some lawyers will come to notify you about a meeting with me. They'll give you some papers, and naturally, you'll ask questions. Please don't make a big fuss out of all this, but I will apply for formal custody of the children. Don't get me wrong, you're a great father." Blah, blah, blah. She starts throwing me one false complaint after another as if to mitigate a little the pain of hearing how a man who lost his better half also had his little piece of heaven ripped away. I had to cut her off. I asked for explanations and she told me that she would talk more about it at the meeting. Then she told me about how she would at least give me that day to pick up the kids from school as it was some sort of threat. Then she hung up, leaving with my thoughts and pain in my chest, and I've never even felt this before. A couple of hours later, just like clockwork, the lawyers arrived. And well, let's just say I wasn't the friendliest person in the world. I know. In my position, I don't have the luxury of being rude, but when you're a teary-eyed and they don't care, you end up making a fuss that can be heard around the block. I hope this doesn't come into effect in the future. Update number 2. Well, have you ever felt like breaking something? In the sense that you're so angry that you feel like hitting the wall until you destroy it completely? Well, I'm holding myself back from doing that right now because the anger I have is not normal. I just came from a meeting with the lawyers and Molly. There, it was alleged that I was unfit to maintain custody because of my drinking habits, being labeled as a, quote, dangerous alcoholic, and a threat to the health and welfare of the growing children. I argued that since weeks before Rena's death, I hadn't touched a bottle, devoting all my time to her care, even neglecting some aspects of my work to stay by her side. Of course, I lied only slightly, for since then, I did drink a little. The week after I lost Rena, I drank at a few bars, and before I knew it, I had drowned a bottle of whiskey. But it was midnight, I was alone in the house, and I just spent the whole time crying on the living room furniture. At the slightest trace of drunkenness, I decided to stop and go back to my room to collapse. The hangover from the day before was terrible, and I still had to make breakfast for the kids and take them to school. In itself, I felt that no matter how defeated I felt, I could still be a good father and role model for my little ones. But they did not see it that way. None of them even believed me. There were questions that my lawyer, whom I had to rush to find because I didn't have time for anything, simply could not answer. Worst of all, it was all alleged that it was Rena's last wish before she passed away, that the children stay with Molly when at no time was the subject ever touched upon during her care. Had it been true, I wouldn't be making this fuss, or I would have done it much earlier. So, I think it's all lies. Had it been true, this conversation would have started weeks ago, and why wait so long? In a few hours, I'll have to pick up the children, and depending on the discussions at the meeting, within 2 days, I will have to give them to my mom or Rena's mother while the discussions between Molly and I continue to unfold. I can't believe I get to hate one person so much. I haven't mentioned anything to my mom, but eventually I'll have to, as I'd rather she keeps Lynn and Mickey. I wrote Molly a few moments ago, almost going against my will, to comment on how things she was doing was going over the line with someone who has suffered so much, and that I'm not the man she's trying to fight. The kids love me and I love them. But when I finished commenting to her about everything, do you know what her message was? And I quote, "I'm sorry, but we're not allowed to maintain contact during this process. You know what that is?" I tried to send several messages, but she just left them to read without replying. It was outrageous. I don't know whom to ask for help. I don't even know how to tell the children that not only have they just lost their mother, but they're about to be involuntarily abandoned by their dad. And I know for a fact that Molly would not be the best person to raise them. She's never even had children, and she's never been there for her nephew's big moments. You know why? Because she doesn't even like children. And she's never been there for her nephew's big moments, ever. That's the part that outrages me the most, that she's doing this to pretend to be a martyr, spectacle, fulfilling a last will that never even existed. I'll see how I can persuade her, because I don't want another loss in my life. I don't know what might happen if that happens. I only hope to maintain order and composure in a situation that doesn't allow me to keep them. Update number 3. I'm shaking. I'm shaking just writing this. Taking my children away from me has gone too far, and I can't find any solution to the problem. It's been a week since the last update, and the kids are with Rena and Molly's mother, and I've been left alone, reflecting on everything that happened. And during the last chat, which was yesterday, Molly gave supposed evidence that supported Rena's decision about the custody of the children. It was a letter that came from nowhere, and when Rena claiming that she had been afraid of me for years and that in the case the worst happens, the children should immediately go to her. I had never heard such a crock, as Rena and I were very open about the possibility of the worst happening, and quote, spoiler alert, Molly wasn't in the conversation at all. She didn't even say to me anything like, quote, "Get along with my sister, as I know you both have some friction." Nothing like that. No, she just told me to take good care of the kids, and that's it. Reliving those last experiences we had together, well, that was difficult, because it makes me feel small and weak. I wish Molly would have some consideration about what the heck's going on. The issue of the letter is something my lawyer particularly wants to address, since if necessary, he would even analyze the handwriting to corroborate that it is indeed Rena's handwriting. According to Molly, Rena had been telling her for years about how she lived in constant terror in the presence of an alcoholic husband in the household. I had my ugly moments during drunken binges, but I'll be darned if I ever talked to her more or even raised my hand to my wife. If anything, there were nights when Rena would scold me for my outings, and rather than get angry or talk back, I just kept my head down, because deep down I knew she was right, and I needed to do better. Something that simply intensified after her condition presented itself. During the whole conversation, it was made clear that I was the worst human being on the face of the earth. Something that even the judge found a bit exaggerated. Anyways, the results will be given in a week, and I don't know if I'll make it out of this one. I'm planning to talk to one of Rena's friends who managed to help me with some expenses during the hospital operations a while ago. The problem is that she is on a trip, and I wouldn't want to interrupt her fun for a problem that doesn't pertain to her. I'll wait a bit and see what happens and, well, what means I can appeal to get the kids back with me. I swear that if they aren't by my side, I will have lost my reason to even continue to exist. And that's perhaps the saddest scenario I can think of. Update number 4. As embarrassed as I was, I had to write to Rena's friend. She's in Hawaii for vacation, and I told her that I had to talk to her about a very important matter about Rena. I didn't want to give too much details, as she seemed to be in a good mood, but I did give her an understanding that it was very, very important, and that as soon as she could notify me, if I could make a video call to her. We tried, but the connections were not entirely friendly. After that, I showed pictures of the alleged letter from Marina, and she said she did not believe it was true at all. I was running out of resources, and I tried because the worst has happened. The kids are now at Molly's, who had final custody. Since then, I haven't been able to know more about the children, since I'm not allowed to have direct contact with them except for the weekends. That is, I won't know if my children are doing well until their legal guardian, Molly, indicates me via a cold text message that they are indeed okay. And if there was anything noteworthy within a week, I'll be allowed to see them in a year if I'm able to meet certain requirements that have to be met monthly. Once a month, a social worker will come to the house and will be asking me a series of questions to do behavioral assessments and residency checks. If he finds out that I'm doing anything remotely resembling drinking alcohol or worse, everything's suspended and I can say goodbye to the rest of my little family. I'm suffering to the point where I'm tempted to go to my friends to drown my sorrows, but the very thought of going to the bar makes my stomach churn. Thinking of even believing that Rena's whole speech, while not accurate to the letter, at least had some degree to truth to it. I'm just sinking into a dark pit where every action I take brings back bitter memories. I don't know if I can even afford a psychologist to deal with this. I've never been a big fan of therapy, although some friends have told me about it. I might even get extra points on monthly evaluations by seeking it out, but I want to distract myself a bit so I don't make a big deal out of it, but no one's that strong. Update number 5. Hey guys, how are you doing? I hope you're all doing well. Well, there's a lot to tell you. It's been quite some time since the last update. 2 months since this whole odyssey of checking in to see if I'm fit to have my children began. How'd it go? Well, I confess that it wasn't easy and even had some not so good moments, like the time I was caught watching my kids at school, waiting for them to come out to pick them up. I understand my limitations, but I've been called because of a conflict that's arisen at school. This was a few days after the children had stayed at their aunt's house. Apparently, my daughter Lynn could not adjust to the idea that her father now had to get out of her life as well. And since the kids that age tend to be a bit mouthy, they pushed too hard until things exploded. One of her classmates made a comment that did not sit well with her about her mother's passing, which, when I found out what it was said, I was even mad. And Lynn took the matter absolutely violently. Even though we taught her to respect others, something in her, quote, made her act that way. So, I was called to talk to her. Then something rather uncomfortable happened. The people at the school did not quite know my situation with the children at the moment, so they decided to call me as a contact. Of course, there was some guilt on my side for showing up and breaking the agreement, but I played crazy and decided to go anyways. It would serve as the perfect excuse to see my kids. I talked to the teacher and settled things out, setting the record straight and taking Lynn home. Or, well, even to Molly's. She and I talked about how what I had done was wrong. As much as she had been upset, Lynn was crying, saying it wasn't fair that the other kids could have a mom and a dad, and that she and her little brother had to be at her aunt's as she didn't even like it there. Before I could ask her why, we were already at Molly's house. When seeing us, the woman panics, grabbing the little girl by the arm, immediately pulling her into the house as if she'd seen a ghost. She began to scold me, saying that it wasn't my duty to look after the children and that if I did that again, she would take more extreme measures. Well, I told her that she's overreacting, and to please not take Lynn by the arm like that, as she could hurt her. Molly also said that she would talk to the people at the school district to prevent such a situation from happening again, and that in such a case, she should be the one to be notified to avoid friction. She then slammed the door in my face, and I spent some time holding in my rage. I went back home, and, well, I started writing. That's nothing new for me lately. Whenever I'm very upset, I start writing a little notebook that I've been carrying with me for a while. Something kind of like this, but a little bit more private. I read on the internet that it does good, being a kind therapeutic writing. It was almost what saved me from breaking all the glass in my house. And I hope the child protection people aren't reading this, and if so, it's just an expression. I'm upset, but I don't plan on doing anything drastic. Once more, I decided to beat Molly at her own game, and it was because of something I learned a while ago. A certain person, me, went to the school and asked the teachers how the kids have been doing. Since I had no way of communicating directly with them, I decided to look for a closest alternative. At first, I was treated with some suspicion, perhaps because of all that venom Molly had spewed at my name. But they quickly realized that I was just a parent trying to get back in touch with my kids. So, I was assisted by Mickey's teacher. She told me that the children's grades have dropped drastically, as was to be expected as children with recent trauma tend to drop in performance. But there was also a substantial change in the behavior of both Mickey and Lynn. I spoke with both of their teachers, and they said they were engaging in somewhat concerning behaviors. While Lynn remained quite touchy and would take the path of violence at the slightest inconvenience, I was told she even raised her voice to a teacher. Mickey's case was radically different, though. While the girl's was violent, my boy took a more submissive and sad posture. He would cry about almost everything and would withdraw from the playground with the other children, to the point where the others would tease him and call him ridiculous names. This caused his sister to arrive at recess and confront her little brother's bullies, and being older, they didn't stand a chance against her. They told about how Mickey once got, quote, lost during PE. They looked for him in the facilities and found him in one of the lockers of the basketball court crying, not wanting to go out, and repeating the same phrase. It's heartbreaking, but I'll repeat it. I want my parents to come back. I don't want to feel alone anymore. It was enough to break anyone's heart. This was already escalating to the levels that we did not know how to control, and I felt that if I had not gone to the school, the children would still be going through those scenarios, seeing how it seemed that their discomfort had the same origin. Over the next few weeks, I tracked the children's behavior in class, noticing how those behaviors and characteristics began to intensify. Mickey's fears and Lynn's authority were becoming quite prominent features of it, and so I asked, at the risk of getting into trouble, for meetings with the children's teachers to understand a little of what's going on. They were the first people who were 100% friendly and supportive of my situation. One of them even took pity on me, saying that the kid's aunt should not be doing these things, and that from where I had shown, I was good enough to have custody. They told me that Molly had not been going to report in meetings, and did not care about the welfare of the kids at school, at least. It was as if she only cared about dropping them off and picking them up. I had to bite my tongue, as I felt I could do something about it, and truth is, I'm already planning it. I will be using testimonials from some individuals to back up my suspicions. I tried to set up a new meeting with Molly a month ago, but it was very recent, and I needed to confirm my suspicions, so wish me luck. As the next time I'll probably be writing, it may be after a movie night with my kids. Well, one can hope at least. Update number 6. Well, they do say revenge is a dish best served cold, but they never talked about the taste, do they? I have an answer for that. It's tasty. Kinda like ice cream. I'll tell you what happened. At the next followed-up meeting I had, I made the light of fact that I heard from the teachers, that I conveniently met on the street, wink wink, that the children were having problems in class, so I asked if it was possible to follow up on Molly's situation with the children in some way. The social workers said that in cases like this, double tracking could be done. It was done per se, but everything was very routine in that regard. With Molly's visits being only a few days apart from mine, the kids were looking good. They commented to me, but when I told them about the teachers, it got to their attention. Their worker told them that they would emphasize individual interviews with the children, which weren't that in-depth, just a quote, "We're fine," and that's it. Turns out, during the next visit, they pulled the kids away from Molly. Not very usual, apparently. And asked them somewhat more private questions, and the kids this time were a bit more explicit, with little Mickey saying something interesting. And I quote, "I don't like it here very much. It doesn't smell funny at Daddy's." Something that caught the attention of the social services was when they asked what they meant. They said there was a smell of something burning at midnight. After the interviews, they made a few little inquiries in the house, just pretending it was routine. And you know what they found? Oh, nothing. Just 2 pounds of marijuana. Just like you read it, Molly had a whole farm in her house, which triggered a red alert. In addition to the poor care that she was giving the children, there was an intervention by social services and a meeting in which I was also involved. I admit, I wanted to laugh heartedly every time she said, "But it's legal," and tried to convince them to keep the children with her when it was declared that the father, who had been in impeccable behavior for the past few months, could just continue with the guardianship himself. When I heard that statement, I felt as if a wind came through every pore of my body, thinking that justice might knock on the door. But that did not just stop there. There was more. It was decided to do more interviews with the children for all the negative effects it had on their behavior, and we learned some dark facts. Molly had a rather strict upbringing with them, where she benefited Lynn more just because she was a girl, showing some resentment towards the male gender. I felt very sad for little Mickey, as he was the biggest victim of a series of abuses, like putting him to sleep, or making him mop the whole house on his own. While Lynn could do less laborious things, but the little girl adopted Molly's bad habits, feeling somewhat overbearing with anyone except her own guardian. According to the child psychologist analyst, if the toxic environment had continued, Lynn would have ended up on the side of, well, negative, and Mickey with severe depression. And just imagine that scenario makes my blood run cold. To believe that for a moment, my children could have had their lives so ruined makes me want to hug them and never let them go again. As I could have predicted, I'm writing this whole thing talking with them in the living room, after having watched the movie on TV. In the end, I was able to regain permanent custody because my last report showed that I was, and I quote, "an exemplary father who, amid all his grieving processes, has not only shown a significant change in the detachment from drinking, but an improvement in the human process as a parent, which makes him capable of making mature enough decisions to be able to care for his 2 children. Excellent, right? That's what they wrote in the report, and I now know I was luckier than Molly, who had to serve a 2-year sentence for a felony possession of marijuana. I really can't believe how lucky I was. Or maybe it wasn't luck but karma. Yeah, it's legal, but not 2 pounds. Currently, the kids are doing a little better in class, and we're having a few more frequent conversations about feelings and how the loss of their mother makes us feel. They have a great future ahead of them, and I'm glad to finally be a part of it.
Well, I wish I would have listened.
Hey everyone, I'm fairly new to this group, but I wanted to share my story and get some advice if I can. I'm 28 and female, recently welcomed two beautiful baby girls into my life through surrogacy. My husband and I have been married for the past 3 years and have always agreed from the beginning of the relationship that we wanted to have kids as soon as we could. We started trying to get pregnant right after we got married, but unfortunately, after a year and a half of trying, we were told that we were medically unable to have a baby. My womb is apparently not the right shape to be able to nurture a fetus for the duration of a pregnancy, which was news that broke my heart. Because my husband's perfectly healthy, we decided to look into surrogacy as we would now be able to use DNA from the both of us. It was very important to us that our baby be biologically ours. And saying this, we would have been perfectly happy adopting a child as the most important thing for us being parents. We did want to have that deep connection if possible, so as I said, surrogacy was the next best option. Some background before we get into it though. My brother and I are fraternal twins, and so have always been attached at the hip ever since we were kids. We have always gave our honest opinion about the partners that we brought home and always valued each other's perspectives. When he brought home his now wife, I'll be honest, I did not expect it to last as long as it has, but I never really disliked her. They've been married for 4 years now, and she and I have been able to grow closer since she's been a part of the family. She and my brother had a child shortly into their marriage, and so my husband and I were very open with them about their pregnancy journey. When my husband and I decided to think about surrogacy, my sister-in-law immediately volunteered herself, explaining that she would be happy to involve in us finally having a baby, and loved the idea of our child and their child being connected in this way. My husband and I were weary at first, as we've been told by some professionals that involving family in situations like this can be very complicated, but at the end of the day, money was a big factor. As it always is, if we were to go through the agency and find somebody to carry our baby, it's going to cost upwards of $100,000, and we just didn't have that kind of money to spend despite saving for the past few years. My sister-in-law offered to go through the whole process for only $3,000, and asked that we just cover her medical expenses for the duration of the period. After taking time to think it over and discuss it between us, my husband and I agreed to let her be our surrogate. To be honest, as well as the financial aspect, we did love the idea of our baby being carried by somebody who's part of the family. Everything was going perfectly fine at the beginning. We brought my sister-in-law to the clinic to have the insemination done, took her home afterwards, and basically just stood by her until the pregnancy was confirmed. Things continued to go smoothly up until the first ultrasound date when all 4 of us were given some surprising news. As we were all family, my brother was very involved in the process as well. He loved the idea of our kids being so connected by one womb. So, he made sure to be present for as much of the pregnancy as he could. As I said, we were surprised at the appointment to find out that my sister-in-law was carrying not 1, but 2 babies. Twins. Well, twins did not run in my family, as my brother and I are evidence of, but we never expected it to happen to us. We were all taken aback by the news, but took it in stride, as we did not see it as the biggest deal in the world. My sister-in-law, on the other hand, got very worked up when she heard the news. She began to panic, and it took quite a while to calm her down again. She told us that she'd prepare herself to carry 1 baby, as she had done it before, but was freaking out at the idea of having 2 babies, as well as the fact that she would be giving them to us after their birth. She was able to eventually get used to the idea as time went on, but as she went into the 3rd trimester, she began to have some health problems, including developing pregnancy diabetes. She quickly became high risk, and the babies had to be born a few weeks early, for their safety as well as my sister-in-law's. As a result, both she and the babies had to stay in the neonatal intensive care unit for the past 4 weeks, just to ensure that all 3 of them were in no medical danger. My husband and I were told last week that we were able to take the babies home, and So we've had them here for the past few days. I won't lie, it's been difficult so far, as my sister-in-law's come to stay with us as well, to breastfeed them and continue their skin-to-skin contact. To be honest with you, I'm feeling jealous of her, as I have not been able to have any quality time with my babies in the months since they were born. My sister-in-law has spent every single second with them. For their own well-being, of course, but she's been able to develop the maternal bond that I haven't. I tried to prepare myself for this as much as I could, as I was aware before agreeing to surrogacy that it would be a bit more difficult to bond with my baby initially, due to not carrying them myself. But the complications of the pregnancy and the resulting 4 weeks of quality time my sister-in-law had with them in the NICU have left me a bit unsure of how my role is within the dynamic. So this is my dilemma right now. I don't want to have anything to do or make my sister-in-law feel uncomfortable or unwelcome, but at the same time, she has been able to develop a maternal relationship with my babies that I have not had the chance to do yet, and I'm just worried that if it goes on too much longer, they won't truly see me as their mother, even though I am. I'm sure some of you are screaming at me that this is one of the complications of having a family member be your surrogate. And yeah, I understand now. But there's the moment I just want to do what's best for all of us. So, in saying that, if anyone has any words of advice they could share with me on how to navigate this situation as smoothly as possible, I would really appreciate it. Thanks for reading. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. I hope you're having a fantastic day. So, we do have quite a few updates to hop into, and if you think it's a wild ride so far, you've seen nothing yet. If you want more daily videos, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and here is update number 1. Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well. It's been a bit over a month since I wrote my post about my surrogacy journey. And before I get into the update, I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody who reached out and their words of support and advice. It really means a lot to me to know that there are people out there sending me good energy throughout this process, and that I'm not alone in the struggle of bonding with my babies. In saying that, I did get some rude messages telling me that I should have expected things to be complicated since my husband and I chose to have a family member be our surrogate. As I said in the original post, I'm well aware of this, and the financial aspect was the biggest influencer in our decision. We can all look back and say we would have done things differently if we knew then what we know now, but having those regrets does nothing to change the situation that we're in now. At the end of the day, we made our choice, we're in this position now, and sending condescending messages does not really change anything. So, my babies have been home for about 6 weeks now, and things have been able to settle down somewhat. My sister-in-law stayed with us for about 2 weeks in order to make sure the girls were doing okay, but she and my brother decided to give us some space to bond with our daughters. The few weeks since then have been so great, and I've been able to build my relationship with my girls and develop the maternal bond I've been looking for. Despite the worry I had when writing my initial post, the past few weeks have been full of quality time with the girls, for both me and my husband. Even though my sister-in-law moved out of our home and back in with her husband and their son, she's been checking in quite a bit with us and comes over to see the babies every 2 or 3 days. It's beginning to feel like a bit of suffocation, if I'm honest. Yes, I've been able to bond with them as their mother, but I do believe that my sister-in-law feels an entitlement to them since she carried them for 9 months. We all signed a surrogacy agreement before beginning the process, detailing that upon the child, or children in this case, birth, my sister-in-law handed over all legal rights to us as the legitimate parents. So, in this case, we did everything according to the law. And so my husband and I are the legal parents, which would be useful if things got more serious than they are. I don't think my sister-in-law particularly cares about the legality of the situation though. as I think she feels that she would be able to spend as much time with the girls as she wants. As of now, my husband and I will continue to let my sister-in-law come see our daughters, as we do totally understand that she developed a love for them over the 9 months that they were inside of her. We don't want to take that bond away from her, but we are aware that it could get messy as things progress further. Things are fine in the meantime, as the girls are still newborns and my sister-in-law is no doubt going through some postpartum emotions, but we will be maintaining our boundaries as time goes on. I don't have much more to add here, just that I'm absolutely in love with my girls. They're the most beautiful babies I've ever seen in the world, and I would have already done anything for them. If everything else falls apart, at least this experience has brought them to me, so I will never regret it. I'll leave this here for now. If anybody wants to reach out with some advice on how to manage the relationship between my sister-in-law and the babies, I would really appreciate it. But as I said above, condescending messages about how I should not have had a family member carry our daughters, it's not very helpful and are not appreciated. The decision was made and here we are. That's what matters. Thank you again for reading this. I will be back soon. Update number 2. Hey all, long time no update, I know, but things have been pretty chaotic around here for the past few weeks, so let me explain. A few weeks after my last post, my husband and I decided to talk to my brother and my sister-in-law about her relationship with our girls. It was getting to the point where she would just arrive at our home at all hours of the day without even giving us any notice, just to spend time with the babies. We had to be gracious to her about the situation, as we do understand that she loves them. But we had all talked things through before we agreed to her being our surrogate. We had discussed the fact that despite the expectation that she would grow to care about the babies, because how can you not when you're carrying them inside you for 9 months? She must acknowledge that we are the parent, not her. Again, I do know that us having a close family member as a surrogate was maybe not the best choice, but we did have a lengthy conversation about boundaries with her for this very reason. I know it's naive to think that things would go strictly to plan when emotions get involved, but the bottom line is, my sister-in-law is disrespecting us as the baby's parents and seems to believe that she's more suitable than we are to take care of them. So, after some conversations between my husband and me about how to navigate the discussion with my sister-in-law, we decided to sit down with her about 2 weeks ago and talk things through. It did not go that well, to tell you the truth. She got super upset quite quickly, telling us that she'd grown to really love the girls throughout the pregnancy, especially during the weeks that she spent with them in the hospital. We tried to explain to her that we did not want to stop her from seeing the babies, but that she had to respect the fact that we are the parent, not her. It was a pretty emotional-fueled conversation with a lot of tears shed and raised voices. My sister-in-law got a bit nasty at the end, choosing to remind me that I'm not my daughter's biological mother and that she had a better bond with them than I ever would. My husband and brother then had to get her to leave, as I got really upset by this. We reminded her before she left that we had discussed her relationship with the babies, before she even got pregnant, and that she had even signed a legal document on the matter. As I said, this took place about 2 weeks ago. We had no contact with my sister-in-law up until 2 days ago, and she asked to come over to visit the girls. We said yes, glad that she seemed to be less upset and that she respected our boundaries and asked to come over instead of just showing up. She was much less rude this time, respecting when I brought up the feeding and sleeping schedule I developed for them. And before the conversation, she just waved me off when I told her I needed to feed them or change them, saying she knew they were fine, so it's great to see that she had taken what she said on board. So, that's where we are now. Things got worse and then a little better. we're still trying to navigate this situation as best as we can, and there's bound to be some trial and error. I'm just glad that my sister-in-law has taken what my husband and I said to her under consideration and respects her place in my daughter's lives. I'll leave this here and let you all know how things go moving forward when I can. Thank you again, as always, for reading and for all of the support. Update number 3. I know. It's been quite some time since I last updated you on how parenthood has been for us, especially with our surrogate drama, but we've actually had some other family issues over the past few months. My husband's father got sick a few months back with lung cancer, and unfortunately, he passed 3 weeks ago. Things have been pretty chaotic since then, as my father-in-law had previously been very healthy, and the illness came on quite suddenly. Obviously, he must have been suffering from cancer for some time, but for some reasons he had no symptoms until the very late in the sickness. He collapsed and was rushed to the hospital, and within 3 days he was gone. My husband's absolutely distraught, understandably, so I've just been trying to be there for him as much as I can. We've had to do quite a bit of organizing in the week since he passed, as it was all very sudden, and my mother-in-law's been a mess since losing her husband. My husband's family lives a few hours away, so we both had to spend quite a bit of time away from home. We did not want to disrupt our baby's routines by taking them into an unknown environment while still so young, so we asked my brother and sister-in-law to take care of them while we were gone. Some of you might disagree with us doing this due to the recent issues that we had with boundaries and my sister-in-law, but we reasoned that we needed somebody who genuinely loves the girls to take care of them. We knew that she would make absolutely sure that they were healthy and happy for as long as we were gone. We got back a few days ago after helping out my husband's family as much as we could. We went straight to my brother's house to pick up our girls, and we were so happy to see them, especially my husband. After going through a very emotional week, we just wanted to hug our babies and take them home so we could adjust to the stress and grief of the past few weeks. My sister-in-law had definitely gotten more attached to the girls over 2 weeks than she was looking after them. She was very reluctant to hand them back over to us, offering to take care of them for longer if we needed, even offering for as long as we ever wanted, because she knows that we need more time to grieve. I do believe that she cares about my husband's loss. She's not a horrible person after all, but I do think that she wanted to spend more time with the girls. I'm sure this could become a bigger issue as time goes on, especially given the fact that we'd had to talk to her about boundaries already. But to be honest with you, we did the best we could with the situation we were in. We never in a million years expected such a sudden loss, especially of such a young and healthy man, and so made the decision we made in a fluster of panic and anxiety. The bottom line is that we gave the girls to someone who we trusted to look after them while we were gone, and my sister-in-law did just that. We'll just have to deal with the consequences if there are any later. That's all I have for now. I want to say a huge thank you for everyone who has reached out, though I do apologize for the lack of responses in the past few weeks. I'll do better in the future to reach back out to everybody, as the support of many have shown me over the past few months has been an absolute blessing. Don't worry, I'll be back very soon, but in the meantime, please look after yourself and hug your loved ones. Update number 4. Hey guys, it's been 2 months since my husband arrived home after arranging his father's funeral. As you'll remember, his death was quite sudden, and my husband's still grieving quite heavily, which is to be expected. I was not going to write another update here, as our family's loss is neither relevant to this thread nor anyone's business, to be honest, but a recent development has me needing to vent somewhere. My father-in-law left a last will and testament, and in it, left my husband quite a bit of money. It's enough money to give us quite a comfortable life for the next 2 years or so. My father-in-law used to be the CFO of a quite successful company before retiring a few years ago, and has spent the majority of his professional life saving in order to make life easier for his children and grandchildren. As my husband is the eldest child and also the only one of his siblings to have children so far, he received the lion's share of the inheritance. Due to the legal process being as annoying and complicated as it is, we won't actually be able to touch the money for a few months, but this is not a problem for us. We'd never expected to be receiving as much money as we were in the first place. We mentioned the inheritance in passing to my brother and sister-in-law last week, and things escalated from there. My sister-in-law pulled me aside just before we left to go home, asking me what I thought about the idea of giving her some of the money we were going to receive. Well, I was shocked at this, to be honest, as the question came totally out of the blue. Things had been a bit tense between us coming back from staying with my husband's family. You'll already remember that my sister-in-law became a bit too attached to our twin daughters due to being our surrogate. Since we returned, she sort of slipped into an old pattern, insisting that she knew what was better for the girls because of their physical connection, and coming over to see them more often than we agreed to. Despite this, my husband and I have been grieving and so actually sort of appreciated the extra help. It seemed that my sister-in-law had slotted herself into our family dynamic and so felt entitled to some of my husband's inheritance. She reasoned with me that she had already asked for less money from us than the surrogacy than we would be asked from anybody else, and so felt this was sort of a bonus. This was absolutely ridiculous to me, and I said that to her. By this point, it had almost been 2 years since we had all signed the surrogacy agreement, and so I had not even thought about financial aspect of it in a very long time. I told her that we absolutely would not be giving her any inheritance at all, as we had already gone through the specifics of the surrogacy, and she herself had named the amount of money she wanted us to pay her. I also reminded her that my husband and I had paid for all her medical costs during the pregnancy, and hers had been very high-risky, so she had needed quite a bit of medical care. I again told her that there's no chance of this happening, that she was being unfair in asking this from us, and to please not bring it up to my husband as he's still quite fragile. My sister-in-law was quite irritated at our conversation. I think she genuinely believed that she deserved some of the money due to carrying our babies, which again, I know is a big reason to not have a family member be your surrogate. I have not spoken to her since that we had the conversation, though I've spoken to my brother about it and he was shocked that she would even ask such a thing. My brother and I are twins, and so are close as you can imagine, so his wife's behavior towards me has been quite upsetting for him, which I do feel bad about. I'm just left feeling quite upset about how everything's gone down for the past year or so, as things have become so complicated within our family due to my husband and me choosing my sister-in-law as our surrogate. It's revealed a side to her that I'm weary of, especially because she seems to feel so entitled to our daughters, and now our money. I really do feel for my brother too, as I feel that I've messed up his relationship with his wife. That's all for now, guys. I'm trying to put the situation out of my mind for the time being, especially as I chose not to tell my husband about the conversation with my sister-in-law. He's still reeling from losing his father so suddenly, and he doesn't need this on his plate as well. I'll just say before I go that the messages I received after my last update meant the absolute world to my husband and me. The people in this group are some of the kindest I've ever met in my life, in real life as well as on the internet. Your words of kindness and encouragement have been such a source of positivity for us all, and I always appreciate you for that. Thanks for reading. Speak soon. Update number 5. Nearly a year later. So, things got a bit crazy before they got better, I'm afraid. My sister-in-law reached out to my husband and me shortly after asking for part of my husband's inheritance from his late father. She again asked for a portion of the money, but added that if we did not give her the money she believed that she deserved, then she wants to take one or two of the twin daughters. That's right. As she felt she earned the right to be their mother after carrying them for 9 months. When I tell you that we were shocked into silence for about 10 minutes after hearing this, I promise I'm not exaggerating. She left this as a message on our machine, saying that if she did not get either the money or the baby, she would be taking legal action against us. We of course knew this wasn't even possible, as she signed an official document when agreeing to the surrogacy. She had also provided us with a new recording of her attempt to blackmail us. I'm honestly not sure what she expected to achieve with that message. As you can guess, she and my brother are no longer together. After we told him about the message she sent and played the recording for him, he confronted her and left with their son. He took her to court to get full custody of him on the basis that she's not currently mentally stable, and the case was definitely ruled into his favor, which no one's surprised about. She sees her son every 2 weeks on supervised visits, but other than that, she's no longer part of the family. We did end up having to take a restraining order against her, as she kept coming to our home insisting on seeing our daughters, and so we haven't heard from her in about 4 months. I do still feel really guilty about how things went with her, as part of me feels that she may not have had the mental episode if she had not agreed to be our surrogate. At this point, my family and I are just trying to heal from the situation, as it's really taken a toll on us, combined with losing my husband's father so suddenly. I've been making an effort to speak to my brother as much as I can. As I said, I do feel very guilty about the entire situation. I feel responsible for his marriage breakdown despite him constantly telling me otherwise. I just hope that we're both able to heal together from this whole thing, as it's been quite traumatizing. And saying this, the 2 things that this ordeal has given me, or my 2 beautiful daughters. I'll never regret this journey, as it's brought me 2 angels to me and my husband. And that's the absolute most important thing to me. Well, I'm going to end this here, as I don't have much more to say, and would like to just move forward with the situation with my family. I want to say a huge thank you for the last time to each and every one of you for being there for me throughout this journey. As I've said before, the support I've received from the people in this group have reminded me of the kindness of people, and that means the world to me. Thank you guys so much for everything. I know this is long, but I really appreciate anybody who takes the time to read this. I don't even know where to begin. Let me give you a bit of background. I'm 31 female, and my brother, we were raised by extremely religious parents. They are Christians and raised us to have the same values as them. They wanted me to be married and stay at home to have children, but I wanted a career, and to get an education instead. We live in the United Kingdom, and I work hard in high school and got a scholarship for law school, while getting a loan to cover the extra expenses. I left my parents' house at 18 and cut them off. I married Caleb, 31 male, when we met at university and started off as friends. But he asked me out not long after, and we've been in a romantic relationship till I graduated with my LLB degree and completed the LPC course. During my early days practicing law, under a supervised training contract, I got engaged to him. Over time, my client base just grew substantially, and safe to say I'm one of the top 15 solicitors in the city. My big brother works as an in-house investigator and helps me with property investigations. Instead of collaborating with agencies, I preferred him to accompany me. Besides, he only used to have irregular stunt gigs, which weren't sufficient for him, so I helped him with a full-time job. Neither of our families knew about my relationship with Caleb at first, since we did not want anyone to get the wrong idea if it did not work out. After a few months, we agreed. It was time. And I met his older sister, Haley, who was then married to her husband, Sam. She quit her job when she gave birth in order to take care of their children until he was old enough for preschool like they planned it. Haley was very close with Caleb, But she also used to be close to me and continued all the way when me and Caleb got married. When it comes to my mother-in-law and father-in-law, I did not like them from the start as they possess an air of self-importance. They're one of those people who start showing a doctor they know their knees or shoulders or the weird mole on their back at the parties. They'd pay a stranger, but expect freebies from their own. This is how I describe my in-laws. Now here's where it all starts. As I'm friends of Haley, I helped her often with her kids, so I noticed a change in her behavior. She was talking less than usual and seemed overall much less happy. Worried for her, I called her one day and asked if anything was wrong, and she told me that Sam wanted more kids and was putting pressure on her until he eventually decided to get separated. The two of them had been together since they were 21, married since they were 28, and were coming up on their 7th-year anniversary. Me and Caleb went to her house and just to see how she was, and she led us inside looking frightened. I had been planning on staying quiet and letting them have their moment before leaving with them, but then she asked what I thought about the situation, basically asking if I thought she deserved this, if Sam was in the wrong, etc. I told her that nobody deserves a situation like this. I naturally wanted to help her since she was like a close friend to me. I said that I could talk to Sam, but she refused because she forbid her from going outside or talking to her family about this, as he thought that we were a bad influence. He told her that if she disrespected him, he would divorce her altogether and make sure that she never believed in happiness again. I reassured her that he could not do that and offered her help to file a divorce if she wanted one. I wanted her to have a proper solicitor who was competent, proficient, and qualified, much like myself, though my field is real estate law and finance, and I'm well familiar with family law as well, having taken a course in it at school. So I asked her to go down to the CMS's office tomorrow and fill out a form for child support. Even if he chooses to not be in her and their child's life, he's financially responsible to support it. She just needed to give information about her, her child, and Sam, and any relative details to assess child support eligibility and the financial responsibilities of her and Sam. Long story short, throughout the divorce proceedings, alimony, and securing better child support, she had no intention of compensating me for the extensive support I provided her. I told her that since she's family, I was willing to give her a discount of 40%, but she straight away said no. That's not necessary since she took my case as pro bono. Well, that's not true, but I did not argue with her for the sake of our friendship. Just after 8 months, she married another man, Maxwell, who agreed to be the father of her child from her first marriage. Their relationship quickly went downhill, and I personally think that they should never have gotten married, but oh well. A few months ago, I was with Caleb at the grocery store. Haley approached me and asked me to represent her for her second divorce because Maxwell had been very abusive to her, often hurting her by bringing up her first marriage whenever they had a disagreement. She made it all very believable. I went through my regular speech of trying to reconcile and go through counseling, etc., but she said that she needed this divorce. I showed her my rates, and she seemed to be hit with the 1 hour consolation is $100. She just responded saying, "Hey, I can't really afford this kind of solicitor fees. Was kind of hoping you could just help me as a friend. Sorry to bother you." I obviously refused point blank to help further other than give a discount, as I felt this to be exploitative. I understood that she seemed to be in a tough spot, but I could not bring myself to provide assistance without fair compensation, especially when I have to cover my student loan, including the fee from the LPC course, which is expensive and not included in the tuition. So it was time for freebies to stop. I responded with something professional and tactful, declining to give it unpaid advice. I'm no good at wording stuff like that, but something that politely said, "No, I don't work for free." Haley automatically had insult issues with me, saying that she finds this very stingy and the fact that I not want to help her said enough about where our friendship was headed. I patiently explained to her, no need to be dramatic. Put yourself in another career like a bricklayer or a gardener. Now imagine somebody asking you to come build a wall or put together a rose garden because they don't want to spend the money to pay somebody to do it. You quickly see how ludicrous self-entitled the request is, especially given the fact that the apartment you looked at was out of your price range. Likewise, you need to pay if you want a solicitor. And we're looking at a minimum of 10 hours. Are you happy to proceed at that basis? If yes, then sign the agreement form and I can start on today's date. Well, she laughed and got a little rude to me. We'd been friends for that many years at this point, and it all went out the window because of this. I was pretty mad, and in a moment of pettiness I said, "I'm not surprised your marriage did not last. What nerve do you have to say something like that? I can't believe you have the audacity to demand my services when you did not compensate me for the help I provided during your first divorce." Her jabs and insults evolved after that, saying that my marriage also would not last. Well, that I wasn't good enough for Caleb, and that she was surprised that we were still together. She went livid, screaming at me and Caleb to leave, which we did. Caleb was annoyed at me after this, saying that while we had our differences, that was not the time for it. I apologized to him when we got home because I genuinely had not meant to say it when I did. But I refused to apologize to Haley because what I said was true. Haley then turned everyone in the family against me. My in-laws started messaging me, asking me to apologize because I was, quote, heartless for saying that when Haley was grieving, and that I should be the big person and just own up. It became an unspoken expectation from the family that I should not ask for money from somebody who just recently started a job, because Haley has a lot of existing commitments to manage. It's as if I owed them professional services and my expertise, even though she most certainly had the means to pay. But I don't owe anyone anything and have no obligation to spend my time helping her. I can see a moral obligation if somebody's life were at risk, like a doctor or a nurse helping an unconscious person in a store, but nobody dies if a divorce doesn't happen. This expectation's pretty universal across my occupations, and I get asked this all the time. So, during a family dinner that was arranged by Caleb during the weekend, I told everybody a white lie that her issue was beyond my scope of knowledge, and also recommended a local company. Even though I could handle this case, I said, "I work in a very specific specialized area of law, and I'm very good at it, but if you're asking me something outside of the area, my opinion's gonna be barely worth more than some Joe Schmo on the street. I'm not just going to be informed about everything. I don't just know a lot of this stuff off the top of my head because it all depends on the most recent, relevant, applicable precedent." My in-laws accused me of being ungrateful and the very ones who helped me through law school by slapping them with my legal fee. In reality, Caleb and my mother-in-law only got an extended family member to give me some general guidance, which wasn't particularly helpful. Nobody helped me in becoming a solicitor. My father-in-law was like, family helps family, which I agree with, but I believe that help must be reciprocal, and right now Haley's not reciprocating that help. He mentioned that he knows a mechanic who would not hesitate to help without charge if it was for a friend or even a minor acquaintance, and that he does this all the time. Of course, to each their own, people are different. When it comes to me, I and a lot of my friends do particular things we still charge each other for. We might offer a discount, but when it comes down to it, we're still putting in time and effort to do it. On top of it, we consider it to be supporting each other's work. None of us expect to do anything for free unless somebody offers. In my personal experience, I 100% tell my friends to make appointments with me during work for things, and they do. We talk, everyone's happy. He then asked that I could at least give my sister-in-law an initial consultation where she tells me what the issue is. And I tell her if, it might be actionable, and then talk about where the case is and how much it would cost to continue assisting her. He said that since she has some important questions regarding the legal aspects of the divorce that she needs me to answer, as she does not want to spend extra money on legal fees. It bothered me, and I did not know if the expectation would continue even after I gave her a consultation, so I did not want to commit in the first place. Solicitors, every minute is billable. It'll cost money for me to research if she has a case. Explaining it will be a complex and may require more in-depth answers. 3 to 4 questions, then become more with follow-up. If I give it away this time, she'll come back again with one more question, over and over, and then her cousin does, then her neighbor does, and when my other friends have questions on law matters, they'll expect free advice too. It's a slippery slope. So I conveyed to my father-in-law, I'm appalled because this is beyond disrespectful. If she wants free legal assistance, she could get in touch with the local Citizens Advice Bureau for guidance. There's other options for her too. Like websites, with $5 trial periods of pay-per-question that are super affordable and accessible. If they're easy questions, those resources can help her. I can also give the contact info for another solicitor who does free consultations. But if she wants my help, then I can give her a quote. I charge a modest friends and family fee, and if she doesn't want to pay for it, then she can go elsewhere and just get charged 3 times the price. It's entitled of her to expect me to do it without a fee. Well, still, they both kept these obnoxiously just forcing me to take this up. What they don't realize is when that happens, she becomes a prospective client and all kinds of rules apply. Because literally anytime I provide free advice, I enter a solicitor-client relationship that subjects me to risk, accountability, professional ethics, and malpractice claims. Even if I'm willing to donate my time and skill, there's multiple ways this could go wrong and hurt my career. Sounds unlikely, sure. But not so much if I dish out advice to every friend who harasses me for free service. I wanted to put my foot down, but I already knew my family would think I was an a-hole for doing so. So to be diplomatic, I offered to answer a couple of quick general questions, but if there's a lot of grounds that need to be covered, I'd need to charge for specific advice. I was now labeled as selfish, totally overlooking the silent sacrifices I've made for everyone's benefit. It's ridiculous of anybody to take money off the table by asking to do it for free. One question in between might be one thing. A full consultation is outrageous. Free advice does not pay the student loan. The home seller isn't giving away the house for free, so there's no reason for me to give away my legal advice for free. I spent a crap ton of money to learn this stuff and worked hard on that degree and simply just don't want to get anything for the fruits of my labor. I earn a very lucrative living, by selling my time and expertise in the field. I have no idea how my in-laws could think that it would not be appropriate to refuse to waste hours that I could otherwise be charging to represent somebody who really deserves my help. That night, Caleb asked me for help and I knew what it was, so I said no, refusing to represent Haley without payment. He gets furious with me and told me that I should have just said yes, what can I help you with? He ended up demanding that I reconsider and provide my services pro bono because she was struggling financially. I've talked over and over to him, but he was just stuck in his ways. I then told him that I did not think that he should force me to help Haley with that, so he had been ignoring me all night. Well, I tried to have a conversation, but he said that there was nothing that I could say to change his mind. This made me furious, because this fight between my husband and me was triggered by Haley. I started wondering if she's been lying all along about Sam and Maxwell. I checked with several friends of mine and they all seem very positive about their integrity. I then met with Sam, who confided in me about his suspicions regarding Haley's fidelity, which led to him to leave the house. He doubted that she might have been cheating on him when they were together, but he doesn't have any concrete evidence. Also, he never did anything that Haley told me. It was all a lie. He never forbid her from anything, nor did he make any threats. I assured Sam of my support, providing the reason that she brought this upon herself by instigating my family to push me into doing unpaid labor. The next day, I made a plan and agreed to help Haley. I noted a friends and family discount in a separate line at the bottom of the bill, making it a $0 invoice and sent it to her just to make the point so she knows how much she wants me to do for her. I then started the divorce procedure while outwardly supporting Haley, and I did orchestrate a move. I asked my brother to initiate an investigation into her, gather information and brainstorm ways to find anything that might confirm or dismiss these suspicions. He soon finds out about Bernard, a guy with whom Haley has been having an extramarital affair. They've been together since Haley and Sam got engaged and continue to be together till now. I arranged a meeting with him, and during our conversation, he revealed that Haley had portrayed their relationship as part of an open marriage. She first met him at a party that she said he was cute, and asked him to take her home. On the way, she told him that she had a husband, and just opened up their relationship. Well, Sam took her word for it, and it was for several years under the assumption that the relationship between them was just very casual. She spoke to him about Sam every now and then, but it wasn't that serious. Always more negative than positive. When she divorced him, she told Bernard that she did not want to marry anyone again, while she secretly married Maxwell. The concept of an open marriage is all about the awareness and consent of all parties involved. Haley lied. When I told him this, he did not like that Haley had been doing this behind her partner's back and was disappointed in himself for being so careless and foolish. Knowing this, I rigorously prepared Bernard for his appearance at the witness stand. He was more than willing to settle the score with her and make her pay for lying deceitfully. At the courtroom, I called Bernard into the box, pretending to be on Haley's side, but then I ended up blowing it on her face. She was shocked seeing him there and looked really nervous and panicked. Bernard admitted having been in a relationship with Haley and expressed all about how she lied about being in an open marriage and hid her second marriage from him. Well, she now stood up and said that it's not relevant to this case, and began to fish for custody. Full custody. 51% child support, no visitation, parental rights, etc. Maxwell did not legally adopt your child, idiot. No need to demand these things, especially when it's your full responsibility to take care of your child. Anyways, she acted abusive during the divorce proceedings. The judge was lenient with Maxwell as he had no prior record of abuse. The court gave a verdict in Maxwell's favor, and Haley ended up paying instead of receiving. When we were leaving, Maxwell thanked me while Haley called me a tight-fisted a-hole. After a long and tiring day, I reached home. Caleb tells me that he's not happy with what I did. I understand how it can be hard for him to see his sister fail, but I've decided to stand my ground on this one. I told him he's supposed to side with me over Haley, but he says he's not picking sides and it's purely just advocating for fairness and standing up for his sister. I gave him an ultimatum: accept what I did or consider separation. When I said that, he was furious. Well, that's an understatement. I really have to ask this advice because honestly, I don't know if I'm overreacting. I'm wondering if I should just apologize to everybody to be done with all this. I was wondering if anybody could relate to Haley or me. Update number 1. Just really wanted to thank everybody who took the time to write honest advice. I truly appreciate it, and I read every single comment. I don't know what's wrong with this woman. Haley came to me again shamelessly for help with charges on her, saying that she forgave me for what I did to her and now she really needs my help. Apparently, Maxwell filed a case against her for the distress caused. Yeah, deception, misrepresentation, or fraud could be grounds for legal action if it led to damages, financial loss, or even emotional distress. Even after boundaries, early, she's making my whole life an unpaid eternity of, quote, just a couple of quick questions. What a tightwad. I'm not doing this again. It's like having an artist friend and expecting art for free. Nah, respect my professional. I advised her of how the process typically works and had recommended some solicitors who could handle her case, but she wanted me to represent her. She was not having this. I told her that I can't just accept it if she won't pay for the years of schooling I spent studying and researching to acquire information and knowledge, and the practice it took me to help her learn the answer. And if I answer her questions, then I'll have to answer everyone's. She told me that she doesn't have a single penny even for food, as she was recently fired from her job. Their house was inherited by Maxwell before he married and Haley, so she has no claim to it and had to move out. She's living in a shelter rooming house as the rent is so expensive here in Winchester. I offered to give her a token amount of $300 and also told her that I gave $500 to charity that helps stray dogs, just to rub it in. She refused the money and promised that she intends to repay me when she becomes employed. But I explained to her that marital fraud can be quite complicated actually. Every legal question is dependent on multiple circumstances, and very often the answer changes depending on what those circumstances are. I just needed to be 100% in the advice I'm giving her, or she may end up screwed. And I just may be screwed too if she decided to sue me over it. So I told her, it's all complicated by issues around the professional malpractice, insurance, and liability. If I give you the cuff unresearched advice due to undisclosed info, you'll follow my advice. And then later something bad might happen and there's a problem and you lose money because of it, you're going to come back to me complaining. You'll blame me for the bad legal advice and it cost you money. She immediately added that she would never do that. She assured me like 100 times, but I told her it may still cause issues. What if you think I'm now your solicitor when I don't view you as a client? Stuff like that gets so many solicitors in trouble, it makes me liable for anything that results from you following my advice, even if it was given for free. This is why we see a lot of disclaimers from solicitors on forums, because the liabilities incurred can be monetary to potentially risking our license to practice law, essentially our livelihood. I spent 6 years to become a solicitor and risked, well, it all. By potentially giving advice that could get me disbarred. No thank you. She got angry and left. While going through a conflict check, it was clear that I could not represent Maxwell because his interests conflicted with the interest of my entitled former client Haley. This is why solicitors often decline to help friends and family. They do it for the same reason therapists often decline providing clinical advice to loved ones. It's risky, ethically dubious, and can go really badly. The next day, Haley reached out to the firm that I joined a couple months back. She explained her financial situation and convinced them why her case was deserving of their pro bono assistance. My firm is somehow interested in her because she specifically requested me to represent her. My boss doesn't see why I should not take this up. Typically, firms cannot force a specific lawyer to take on pro bono cases, but my workplace fosters a culture that highly values pro bono work, and it could indirectly impact my performance evaluations. The senior partners are very much involved in pro bono work, so there's subtle indirect pressure on some other solicitors to follow. So I decided to help her, and she promised to compensate me in the form of a client gift once the case was won. Update number 2. Hey, this is a quick update, just to clarify and point out a few things. I don't feel like it's morally wrong to say no to requests. Even if they aren't requests. I offered to help Haley because I didn't want to give my firm a bad impression of myself just 2 months after joining. Plus, she begged me a lot, and I don't want to continue the no contact that Caleb established with me. I'm not going to go into details because I suspect she lurks here. Also, the last 2 days have been full of love bombing from Caleb, flowers, food, permission to, quote, take the car and do whatever I want, favorite foods and drinks. Well, I won the case, but Haley did not pay me as she promised. The client gift that she gave me was a case closed, stress ball, and a thank you gesture. I, of course, had an argument with her about this. However, the communication failed. I want to take legal action, file a lawsuit or arbitration to recover the unpaid amount. However, I cannot because this is technically my firm's case, not mine. I also can't keep the possessions of her documents, files, and other properties related to the case. Update number 3. Caleb stopped getting text messages from Haley, so he made me join him to visit her, in case something happened. She now got a job as a special ed teacher, and I was furious as she did not make any effort to pay me. I asked her, "Oh, you teach math for disabled kids? Can my struggling friend's kid join your tuition classes without paying any fees? Can you help improve her teaching materials?" "Oh, but why not? It's a simple request." She was like, "I help people all the time, and I would feel bad for accepting payment from my friends when they need me." I told her, "Stop her acting. Aren't you going to be stingy and enforce that tuition fee by making parents pay to educate their disabled child?" I've always helped because I tend to try to live by this standard that if I have the ability to help somebody and choose not to, then I'm morally in the wrong, despite somebody's station and reputation, and that's just what you do for people you care about. Well, it's a nice motto to live by, but that kind of motto also runs the risk of being taken advantage of. I soon showed her that. We had discussions along the lines of, don't worry about paying. At some point, I'm sure I'll need your legal services and we can square up. She took part-time classes for the kid for around 5 to 6 months now. Eventually, she needed my consultation service, and while we did not discuss it, she was under the assumption that this would square us away. On top of working a full-time job over 40 hours, I worked a few more hours outside my office, even though I didn't want to use my limited personal time doing work. I papered the relationship, so there's a record of the questions I asked and the scope of legal advice given. This is both for my protection and hers. The job finished, and I dropped off an invoice of $2,500 via email and registered post. She called me and asked what the deal was. She wasn't nice about it. I argued that she just did a bunch of small favors here and there, and she could not think of, well, the same thing as doing a large single job. This made her so mad, and she said, I would have been happy to help the kid out with homework, probably occasionally a favor, but I'm not waiving off the fee for the full tutoring that I provided him. And now you know how it feels, fish. Your all-work-for-free mindset was idealistic but not realistic, as you've just now seen. Haley is clearly operating on a double standard. She's leeched off me multiple times, but now she's reminded to respect other people's time. If she wanted to go this route, I'd pay her invoice when she paid mine. I told her that both of us could give friends discounts to each other if she thinks it'll even help. She said she needed to think about it, so I'll keep y'all posted. Update number 4. Hey guys. Haley's decision led to threats of a lawsuit and general harassment by Haley and her best friend. I responded that I charged her nothing for both her divorcees, plus she did not pay me to represent her for the charges from Maxwell. What if she got me the work done for her for free? Then she owed me, and I was just collecting on the debt. She said, the difference is, it's different because it's just law stuff. Which felt like I was being looked down on with what I do. So condescending. Her skill set has to be paid for, but my skill set has to be handed out for free. I didn't go to law school, get trained, and pass the bar to do that. The double standard is again very clear, and her diminishing the effort I put in on her behalf seals the deal. I told her that it's not fair at all, as she clearly did not see my abilities as worth the money in the first place. She shoots back. Educating is hard work, and that's a specialized skill. So is being a solicitor. An educator might be a great job, but solicitor work is no joke either. She's just being a stuck-up cheapskate because she's better degree, in her mind, than me, and thinks her time is worth more. I told her that if the invoice is not paid, then it'll be sent to a debt collector agency for delinquency. In the end, from what I've been told, the solicitors she contacted have advised that she never provided an estimate or any type of written payment agreement with me. Pursuing this would likely lead to her opening herself up for being liable for my invoices as well. So she paid me the $2,500. I then began letting everyone in the family and community know how my sister-in-law loves to give her classes away for free. I made sure she was getting the entire saga of the struggles of their disabled child, sibling, neighbor, etc. from everybody who learned she was a special ed teacher. When she confronted me about it, I told her, well, if a solicitor should work for free, you don't need to put a price on teaching, just give it away, or is it only your work that's worth being paid for? Long story short, with embarrassment, she ended up paying me a major part of the amount, with some help from Caleb, for all the services provided by me till now. To settle the rest of the payment, she deducted the invoice amount that I owed her for tuition services, and she also helps me with dishwashing and vacuuming whenever I need it. I'm sitting in the hospital waiting room, surrounded by medical forms and charts, all because of my sweet dog. It all started when my entitled neighbor, we'll call him Bob, who has never been particularly friendly, decided that he would break into my backyard to use my pool while I wasn't even home. So, I live alone in a pretty nice neighborhood with a half-decent pool in my backyard. For starters, it's nothing fancy, but it's perfect for those hot summer days when you just want to cool off. I've owned my house for 2 years now. A reasonably large 3-bedroom villa I just bought at what I believe is my dream house. A place with privacy while remaining in an urban area. The place is all renovated and has a beautiful backyard and the pool in question. Well, I have friends over occasionally, and I enjoy having people over for food, drinks, and of course swimming pool parties now that the weather allows it. I also brought my dog with me from my apartment before this. I have a 4-year-old German Shepherd. I call her Sasha. She's the definition of gentle. She can run full speed through a field of baby chicks and would not harm a single one. I found her in a shelter. She looks like she would rip your throat out on sight, but is basically a giant teddy bear. When we're out, she never barks or gets aggressive with people or other dogs, even when off the leash in a dog park. She loves every person she's ever met, is incredibly sweet and gentle with my 4-year-old niece, enjoys other animals, and even loves the mailman. All in all, she's an extremely friendly and playful dog, especially if you're in her circle of trust. She's very protective, but she can get very anxious around strangers. She's a bit of a self-taught guard dog, but she won't just attack someone randomly unless there's a need for protection. If we say, "Who's there?" she would run to the door and bark as if she was in the house, or if we were outside, she'd bark at someone if they were a stranger. I guess Sasha learned it because someone would drive up the driveway. A family member would say to another, "Who's here?" And then some stranger would be present at the door. She, unfortunately, was very easy to train, and we were able to tell him, "Friend," and he would just calm down. Years ago, I accidentally cut a guy off while driving. A huge tree in a corner looked as best as I could, but the dude followed me home for a good 20 minutes and I pulled up my driveway. And Sasha always runs out to greet me. I stepped out of my car, turned to face the guy, and started shouting at him to leave my property. Sasha became the terror that she demoned from hell, barking, snarling, near choking herself on her own hatred for this dude. Yeah, she chased him all the way to the edge of the property and then came trotting back so proud of herself. I half expected her to attack him, but she never did. Coming to my neighbor, he's around 25 and he's an absolute troublemaker. He would do things like play loud music, always throw parties, and park his car in my driveway without permission. He lives with his parents, who are nothing like him. They're very quiet and sometimes helpful too. As far as I'm aware, his parents are wealthy and bought the house that they all live in. Shortly after moving in, I found him in my yard using my pool. There's no way he had just got the wrong yard, so I definitely got really angry because for starters, I don't like him. I was so mad, I called him right away and was like, "Dude, what the heck? You can't just use my pool without asking me first," and you know what he said? He gets out of the pool and was like, "Come on, man, it's just a pool. What's the big deal?" Apparently, the owner before us was friends with them, and the neighborhood kids, they would use the pool when they wanted to, and they assumed I would do the same. I felt totally caught off guard, and I'm just not comfortable with the flat out, "No, I don't want you in my pool." But the fact of the matter is, I don't want him in there. I also didn't want weird animosity between us because I live next door to the guy. I politely told him that I'm fairly a private person and enjoy my privacy. I said that you can easily pick up one of those temporary inflatable pools for like $400 from the home improvement stores, or maybe even Amazon, and that it's about 3.5 feet deep and 10 feet long, and about maybe 4 feet wide, and is very easy to set up as long as your yard is fairly flat, which it is. I assumed the matter was closed, but each time I was wandering around outside with Sasha, he would just ask over and over and over and try to sell the idea to having access to it to me. One day, while Sasha and I were walking in the park, Bob appeared out of nowhere and starts talking to me about the pool again. That he'll share the maintenance fees, yada yada, so I just really firmly told them that, well, he really needs to stop talking about the pool and walked away. Sasha starts growling at him, which made him really uncomfortable. So he left. I was a bit shocked for the rest of the day. I'm used to dealing with entitled parents, so I don't know why this affected me the way that it did. I was seriously getting tired of the nagging and the pool and his access to it being the only thing he wants to connect with me about. It's not like we created a bond or something. All convos are about the pool. So, I and my college friends, old-timers, have a party one evening. I invited Sasha's dog friend from the dog park, and everyone was really having a great time. But as I was showing the front yard to my friend, who do you think pops up? Bob. Shows up uninvited, and he was heavily drinking. He got disruptive and made all of us uncomfortable, and he starts talking about how it must be nice to be invited to enjoy the pool. And I said to him, "Can you go now? Dude, I'm having company."
"Oh, I know, you don't have to be so aggressive."
Well, it was really embarrassing for me in front of all my friends and family. So, I talked to his parents, installed security cameras, and even put up a taller fence. Posted no trespassing signs all over. A few days later, I noticed that Sasha was not eating her food and was vomiting frequently. I took her to the vet, and they told me that she swallowed something that was causing a blockage in her digestive system. So the vet recommended surgery, which was expensive, but I agreed to it. After the surgery, the vet informed me that Sasha had swallowed a pool toy that had caused the blockage. Well, at this point, I was shocked because I didn't own any pool toys. And Bob immediately popped into my mind. I knew that he might have thrown the toy in my yard. When I confronted him about it, he denied it, but I could see it in his eyes. I was very upset that my sweet dog had to go through so much pain because of some jerk's senseless act. To change the subject, he starts saying that my tall fence is an eyesore and blocks his view of the pool. Yeah, at this point, I'm starting to think he's kind of crazy. He told me that he'll file a complaint with the homeowners association. I told him, well, I'll contact the HOA first and explain the situation then. And the HOA will obviously side with me. So don't embarrass yourself. He even started spreading rumors about me, saying that I'm selfish and don't care about the community. He starts to become increasingly hostile towards me and Sasha. Whenever we would be out in the yard, he would come outside and just glare. Sometimes he would even make loud comments about Sasha, calling her, and I quote, "a stupid dog." She could sense my unease and would growl and bark at him whenever he came near us. And again, after a few days, I was heading to my office and something seemed off with Bob that day. He was just staring at me with a really strange look upon his face. So I ignored him and got into my car. At work, around 4, I received a notification from my home security camera. I opened up the app to find that Bob had broken into my backyard again to use my pool. I was steaming, and I immediately drove back home to yell at him. And when I reached, what I found was Bob screaming in pain on the ground, with Sasha standing over him. He had been bitten badly by her. She basically ripped off half of his calf muscle. She also even ripped off half of his wrist. I'm pretty sure she grabbed him by the calf and leg and pulled him when he was trying to get away. I thought she was going to take the guy's testicles through his boxers. I'm not sure what else happened, considering the blood all over, but my dog wasn't injured and Bob was passed out. Maybe from the pain or something else, I don't know. He was laying in a large pool of blood and all my anger turned to guilt. And at that point, I got very scared. I immediately pulled Sasha away and called the ambulance. The paramedics arrived and transported him to the hospital. The doctors informed me that they've stitched him up and he should stay hospitalized for a few weeks, maybe even up to a month to recover. A week after this incident, he had to walk with a cane, but he was lucky to survive the attack. He was conscious enough to state that Sasha, quote, attacked me like she always does. This simply isn't true. His Facebook is completely public and I have screenshots of him stating that this is the first time he was ever attacked by a dog. I pressed him to detail the attack and he admitted that he used a ladder and climbed over my wooden fence this time to use my pool. And when he was leaving, my 60-pound dog leaped as high as she could and just mangled his boxers. And then she started biting him all over his body. I didn't say anything. I'm now paying all the bills. To be seen and admitted for the wounds, to be checked, cleaned, and treated, for vaccinations to be given, medicine cost, and more, without even thinking twice and calling his parents to the hospital. But things did not end there. Bob demanded $40,000 because, and I quote, there's more than medical bills. It's pain and suffering at this point. Well, he also said that he will sue me and make my life equally miserable if I did not comply. He claimed that I should have done more to prevent my dog from attacking him. I knew that I wasn't at fault and I refused to pay him and more money. First, it's creepy that he noticed that I won't be home at 4 in the evening. Second, I already informed him 1,000 times to leave me in my pool alone. Third, there's a nice big beware of dog warning sign and a visible place mentioning trespassers will become chew toys. Turn back now or forever rest in pieces. My pool was covered using a pool cover. He literally removed it. For insurance reasons, I have a lock on my back gate because of the pool. The gate always remains locked as we would be liable if anything was to happen in the yard. The fence was previously about head height, but not tall enough for it to be difficult to peek your head over. Good that I put up a taller fence. Is he bluffing? Can I really be sued for this? I know that I need to take responsibility for Sasha's actions. Every time I think about it, I feel like I'm going to start crying. I don't want to be one of those owners who is oblivious to how dangerous their dog is, but I also can't help feeling a little bit like a victim in all this. After all, Bob did break into my backyard twice to use my pool as if it's a public pool. I spoke to my father and brother about this incident, and Dad told me that we will handle the case, but first I need to report the break-in to the police. My brother has a 4-year-old and says he and his family will probably not visit my house anymore with Sasha around them. He says since Sasha has snapped, she could do it again. So she's not safe to have around children. We used to spend weekends together a few times a month before this, and the way he words this makes me really angry because Sasha did not snap. She saw my neighbor. Yeah, he's not a robber or something, but she loves everyone, except apparently this guy. Well, she saw him breaking into her home and reacted. Nothing about that screams dangerous around children to me, unless they're also going to break into my house. This is also a very emotional issue for me because Sasha is not just a dog to me. She's my safe place, my hero, the one who had protected me and kept me safe many times in the past when no one else could. But I really need my brother and sister-in-law's support. What can I do to make her understand the situation better? I'm receiving several calls and messages from other neighbors and friends who want to know what happened. Don't know how almost everyone knows about the incident. I barely leave my house and pay to pick up my groceries from the store instead of going inside, because I know Sasha's not allowed inside. And all my friends know that if Sasha isn't welcome in their house, I'm not coming. More than that, I'm afraid Sasha would have to be put down because she's, quote, out of control. What should I do? I know dogs can be put down if they bite or attack someone, but does that apply if your dog attacks somebody who breaks into your home? How can I protect her and myself over this? Did I do anything wrong so far? What can I expect to happen if I report the incident to the cops? I can't imagine staying alone without my dog. Update number 1. Wow, I can't believe how much this has blown up. I didn't really expect this kind of response. Thank you so much to everybody who left a comment. I appreciate that I got advice from people who completely agreed with me, to people who agreed with my brother's concerns. It was really helpful to hear different perspectives. After the incident, I took a week off work to take care of Sasha and make sure she was okay. Also to visit Bob and the hospital now, and then to see how he's recovering and to pay the bills. I've also been cleaning up the blood stains and the damage that's been done to my backyard. Doesn't look like Bob is in a position to sue me. One of you mentioned that I should look into my camera videos to see everything that went down. I totally didn't have time for that before, and everything just went by so quickly. Thank you for reminding me. I'm glad I did. I checked the video yesterday. It looks like Sasha was barking at him for a long time, and when he got out of the pool, she came closer to him. He then threw his water bottle at Sasha before climbing the ladder, and this provoking was the reason Sasha attacked. Now it all makes sense. She had never attacked anyone before, but I understand why she did now. I also saved the video just in case I need it if Bob ever sues me. I hope it never comes to that though. Oh, and some of you were asking about how Sasha's doing and suggested I get the veterinary to check out her health. So I took her to the vet and she's doing fine, but is a little traumatized. They gave her some medicine and she's coming back to normal. I make sure to spend more quality time with her, taking her on long walks and playing with her in the park. I just want to show her that she's still loved and that I always will be there for her. As for me, I'm really going through it, and I'm working with a therapist to process everything and cope with my stress. I've been feeling anxious and stressed about the whole situation, and it's been deeply affecting my sleep. I've been having a hard time focusing at work. Don't know how I would have managed everything till now without my therapist. I've also been talking to some of my other neighbors, who've been supportive and understanding of my situation. It feels good to have some people on my side. Anyways, I'm planning to stop by the hospital today after work to make sure he's doing better. That's all I have time to share with you about how my week is. Well, it's over now. And I better get back to my laptop before my boss notices. I wish I had more time to tell you everything that's happened, but I promise to update again really soon. Update number 2. Guys, some recent events have persuaded me to update you all on what the heck is going on. I'll just get right to it. A couple weeks before, I was at the hospital and I initiated a conversation with Bob's parents. I apologized deeply. I came to know them from that their son has a history of getting into arguments with other neighbors and causing trouble. He even has gone into an elderly neighbor's front garden and picked almost every one of her flowers. I'm talking roses and other exotic, expensive flowers. I then said I'm not going to try and excuse Sasha's behavior. What she did was absolutely unacceptable. But at the same time, their son had no right to be on my property in the first place. To which they both agreed and asked me if I was going to file a complaint. I said yes, and their face turned different. I felt very bad because first, this stupid guy got attacked, and now he's going to face criminal charges. I also know that it's the only way to teach him a lesson. So the next day, I report him to the police for trespassing and breaking and entering. It had already been many weeks since the incident, and they took my statement and said they would investigate. I knew that Bob was the kind of guy who would do anything to get back at me, and I wasn't sure how he was going to do it this time. A few days later, I get a letter in the mail from Bob's lawyer. He filed a lawsuit against me, claiming that I was responsible for his injuries, that Sasha is a dangerous dog, and I was negligent in controlling her. It was full of legal jargon that I didn't really understand. Yesterday, I got another letter, this time from Bob himself. It was a handwritten letter, and it was full of profanity and threats, and yeah, I was pretty scared, honestly, and a bit overwhelmed by the whole situation. I don't care about getting into legal trouble, I just don't want to be at a financial loss for all this. I never intended for anyone to get hurt, and I feel like Bob is taking advantage of the situation. The whole ordeal has been incredibly draining, and I'm not sure how much longer I can even handle it. It's frustrating to deal with someone who refuses to take responsibility for their own actions, but I'm trying my best to stay calm and not let it consume me. My friend and his wife are both lawyers. I called them and sent them snapshots of the letters. They said that it was just a scare tactic and Bob didn't really have a case. They assured me that a person broke into my house and my dog reacts to a threat, and the guy that broke in should be responsible for his own darn injuries. I'm going to talk to them today and then go to the court complex and go from there. Update number 3, a few months later. Well, things have been really tough. Sorry for not updating in a while, but I've been incredibly busy and was not able to find time to update. I've been going back and forth with Bob and his lawyers for months now, and it's been an absolute nightmare. My friend has been working tirelessly to help me navigate this difficult situation. I didn't know that he was this skilled. I remember feeling so helpless and overwhelmed when Bob first sued me. I had no idea how to proceed. I was really fortunate to have a friend who was a lawyer, and he even offered to help me pro bono. He advised me to document everything related to the incident, including the medical bills, other expenses I incurred because of it all. I also digged out Sasha's rabies shot records and gathered all evidence of vet records, proving she gets shots and has a healthy life. All these are really helpful for the case. We've been spending countless hours reviewing evidence, discussing strategy, and going over potential scenarios. So, my lawyer warned me that there's a chance the court can force me to put her down to the severity of the injury, even though this is her first attack. The thought of losing her is absolutely devastating. She's been a constant source of comfort and companionship for me, and the thought of never seeing her again is just too much to bear. I feel like Bob is excessively going after me. I have to take time off work now and then to attend court hearings and meetings with my lawyer. I have to dip into my savings and cut back on expenses. There are moments when it all feels too much, and I can't help but feel angry and frustrated. Bob had trespassed on my property to use my pool without my permission, and on top of it all, I have to face tension at work, at home, at court, everywhere I go. For the record, I'm aware I'm 100% responsible for my pet's actions as the owner. I'm not trying to avoid that. I recognize that Bob should not have been bitten. I'd always suspected that he had a bit of a grudge against me, but I never thought he would climb over my fence once again to do what he desired. Well, I still have some sleepless nights now and then. How much pain Bob must have felt being bitten all over. It makes me sick to think about what could have happened if I didn't have a home security system. I'm so glad I installed it, otherwise I don't know what would have happened to that dude. This legal battle is ongoing and dragging, and I'm not sure what the outcome would be. I just hope that the court can come to a fair decision, and that I can move on from this nightmare ASAP. Update number 4, final OP update. Guys, let me just tell you, I'm so relieved to finally be able to share some good news with you. It's been a long and stressful journey, and I want to thank you for being along with me. But justice has been served. The judge totally saw through his BS and ruled in my favor. We had plenty of strong evidence of Bob breaking into my backyard and even provoking Sasha by throwing a water bottle at her. It was becoming more and more evident that the outcome would not be in his favor. The best part is, when his lawyers sensed that his case is failing, Bob kept trying to call me and apologize, but I didn't even answer. When he had to come directly to the court for one hearing, I didn't even see his face and walked away. He argued that his whole body was bruised and that he's in extreme pain and the injuries will set him back a few months. And his course and his physical goal, as he won't be able to lift. True, not denying that, but he seemed to forget about the part where he broke into my house to go swimming. Well, everyone knew that I had a strong case. His lawyer then contacted my lawyer and proposed a settlement that they will drop the case if I paid a quarter of the initial demand. My lawyer, being the genius that he is, replied that a good settlement will be for Bob to drop the case, and issued a public apology to the owner and the dog if he doesn't want to be embarrassed in front of the world. So let's fast forward to now. Not only did Bob lose the lawsuit, but he was also ordered to pay me $10,000 as a penalty for filing a frivolous lawsuit. He was also ordered to pay all my legal fees. He was also banned from coming anywhere near my property, and I installed a high fence to ensure that he could not break in it again. I thanked the judge and also my friend and left the courtroom filled with a mix of emotions. As for Bob, he paid all the amount and I never heard from him again. I'm relieved that the ordeal is finally over. It was a traumatic experience for me and Sasha. I felt like weight had just been lifted off my shoulders, and I could finally breathe easily again. I also don't ever want this to happen again. I know that I messed up by leaving Sasha alone in the backyard, and I'm doing everything I can to avoid incidents like this. Sasha and I continue our daily routine, but things are a bit different now. I'm much more cautious and aware of my surroundings, and I never leave her alone in the backyard again. I make sure to keep her inside the house whenever I wasn't home, just to be safe. At the end of the day, it's hard to shake the feeling that Bob got what he deserved. Don't mess with my pool, man! And don't mess with me or Sasha either.